So already, good evening, everyone. It's 6:03 p.m. We'll go ahead and call to order the November meeting of the River Valley Parks and Recreation District. Thank you all for being here. We will start with comments from the general public. We have advisory council later. Rachel, are you planning to speak?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we have anyone?
There's no one online.
Okay, no one online. Okay, that means.
Sorry. Okay. So sorry, just put it, I'm numb in my mouth. Well, I first of all wanted to say, I really appreciate all the work that everybody does, both on the district and advisory council and everything. I realize you guys put in a lot of time and effort, and I really appreciate that because Parks and Rec are really important to me, in particular the football. So please keep in mind that my next comments are purely because I want people to be successful and I want it to be around. And I think the importance of it in our community is huge, and I could wax on about many different ways in which it's part of my life, but so I think I've got a couple, I guess my main things are, I would really like to encourage everybody to be mindful of trying to keep whatever the ask is as low as possible. And whatever is needed for to have a functioning pool. There might be things that are wanted and needed, and I think be a great benefit. And I would love to just encourage exploration with grants, with alternative funding to make the bond really focus on a functional pool and bring in other sources as much as possible to help facilitate other things outside that. I also, with regards to the costs, I recognize in talking to people, one of the things I hear is keep the cost as low as possible. And there's a lot of love for the tent. And I recognize there's probably really good reasons why the tent is not the best option. And I guess I would encourage, based upon my experience with the last election go around, is really having clear, factually based, accessible information as to why, as for instance, in this case, it's important to spend more on a permanent roof than on, say, a tent, which is less expensive, people like it, yada yada. So I guess I want to encourage information out to the public that's accessible and concise, unlike myself potentially, and really clear as to why the decisions are made the way that they are above basic cost to replace the pool. That's in a nutshell. And yeah, thank you for all you guys are doing. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Double check on mine again. Anyone else?
Nobody else from the general public, everyone else clears to speak on the audit board.
Great. Just to verify, does anyone from the advisory council want to go in this portion instead of later? You have more time and you can have back and forth, but if you for some reason wanted to go now, like you had to leave.
Yeah, I am gonna have, I mean, I don't know what we're talking about adjusting.
When do you have to leave?
I was planning on leaving around shortly after 7.
Oh, but we'll be fine. Yeah, you're going first, so.
Yep.
I will be back, yeah. There's only a quick few, it's just two things before. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the public comment and go on to the minutes. Does anyone have any changes that you made?
Not from what I saw.
Okay.
I put forward a motion to approve the minutes as published.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That report. Okay, so we have received our audits for the FY 24-25. It is a good audit report with no modifications. I apologize to the board for not getting it out to you sooner. It should have been in your packet earlier, was an oversight, and it's my fault. But it is out to you now. The good news is we do have some experts, the people that wrote the audit here to talk with us, and then also Monica, who does our accounting for us, is here as well. And so I would like to introduce Brad Bingenheimer, who is from Singer Lewick, who is here to speak or give any comments here on the audit. Brad, just for context, the board has only, I emailed it out to them about an hour ago, so they didn't have a lot of time with it, but they have seen these audits before and seen them in the past year. So they're kind of looking a little bit fresh at it right now. But I thought I would turn it over to you guys to walk through it. Also, Joe Cassidy is here as well, who is the lead person there with us on the audit here on site, going through stuff, and is our main contact as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you there, Brad.
Okay, thank you very much for having us tonight. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm Brad Bingenheimer, partner with Singer Lewick, and the firm's lead government sector partner. And of course, we have in front of you the audit report for the year ended June 30, 2025. And our opinion on the financial statements is what we would consider to be an unmodified opinion on the modified cash basis financial statements, which basically says, in our opinion, these financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The financial position and results of operations for the year ended June 30, 2025 on that modified cash basis of accounting. Give you a few highlights in terms of the financial highlights. The district ended the year with the governmental activities having total cash of $2.5 million. And the business type activities, which is basically the recreation program, ended the year with net cash of $267,000. The governmental activities had an increase in the cash of $49,000, where the recreation program did have a reduction of cash of $39,000. Part of that change is, though, related to the fact that the recreation program did transfer $125,000 from it to the governmental funds. So that's why we have that. Overall, your cash went up about $10,000 between the 2 years. When we look at the individual funds of the district, the general fund ended the year with cash of $823,000, which was an increase of $47,000, largely related to that a transfer of $125,000. The improvement fund and the SDC funds were not that much different than the prior year. So not much change between those. In looking at your overall governmental revenues, the property taxes and charges for services had small increases from the prior year. The big changes really happened the fact that the SDCs went down substantially from the prior year. They decreased about $98,000. Of course, SDCs is largely dependent upon construction and development within the recreation within the district's jurisdiction. So those SDCs do fluctuate on a year-to-year basis. Also, in 2024, you had $56,000 of intergovernmental revenues that you did not have in 2025. Other ad revenues were basically about the same as they were in prior year. Of course, the expenditures, also you had not that much fluctuation between them, other than the fact that your capital outlay went down substantially from last year. Last year in 24 year end, you had a capital outlay of $875,000. For June 30, 2025, you only had $50,000. So other than that, everything else is pretty comparable with a slight increase for 2025 costs. And then the recreation fund, there you had operating revenues of $518,000. That was a decrease of about $25,000 from the prior year. At the same time, you had operating expenses of $445,000, and that was an increase from the prior year of $30,000. So the recreation fund still provided, a net increase overall, except for then it did transfer that out to the general fund. So overall, I'd say, if I look at the financial picture, you have a few things that, are some reductions in revenues that, you might need to be thinking about, those things and responding to that. Otherwise, everything was pretty much, as we would expect. And then in addition to our report on the financial statements, we also have our report under the requirements of the Oregon minimum standards. That deals with two things: compliance with laws and regulations for Oregon and internal controls. So on the compliance laws and regulations, there was a couple things I would consider pretty minor related to the budget. One of them is that basically the historical information in the budget, detailed budget document, if you look at that, there's some columns on the left-hand side of the page that has historical information. And for the year ended June 30, 2023, those numbers didn't line up exactly with the actual amounts from the audit of that year. The only thing that I guess I would say going forward you may need to address is that the SDC fund did not separately appropriate debt service. Oregon local budget law does require debt service to be a separately appropriated item, and can't just be appropriated in with the other program costs. And then regarding internal,
Brad?
Yes.
Sorry, could you say that one more time? There was a piece of that I missed. I'm sorry.
Okay. So basically,
regarding the SDC specifically and the debt servicing.
Well, it's any fund that has debt service, and of course, you have the SDC fund does have debt service, so it applies to that fund. But when you make the resolution where you making appropriations, before June 30th every year, Oregon law requires that certain things be separately appropriated, one of which is debt service. The things that they require to be separately appropriated is debt service, transfers out, and contingencies. Oregon law, you have to separately appropriate those categories if you have those in your budget. So the SDC fund did not separately appropriate the debt service amount.
I see. So this is a technical correction.
Yes.
To the depiction of correct information.
Yeah. It's minor, but it is one of those things. According to budget law, you do need to separately appropriate those items annually. And then the other part of that report talks about internal controls. As part of every audit, of course, we come in, we gain an understanding of your internal controls. We do that by asking 1,000,001 really annoying questions, and we recognize we disrupt everybody's work. But it is important for us to understand internal controls in order to properly perform the audit. And as a byproduct of that, if we identify anything that we believe needs to come to your attention, we would be separately bringing that to your attention in a separate document. The good news is that we did not note any deficiencies that require your attention. So from that standpoint, we don't have any concerns about your internal controls. So at this point in time, I'd say I'd invite Joe to maybe comment on how the overall audit went.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. No, it went well as always. I really just wanted to give a shout out to Mark and Monica for being flexible this year. We really pushed them up in our scheduling. We had some kind of organizational restructuring on our side, so we asked them if they would mind starting the audit a little bit earlier this year, and so they were our first audit right off the bat. So really appreciate them being ready still.
I will say you're welcome, Joe. Your team is fabulous to work with. Honestly, it's a rare treat to have an audit team that is not make staff feel intimidated or threatened, and your team, hit it out of the park. You're great to work with.
Thank you very much.
So I guess,
Yes, sir.
does anybody have any questions of us?
I have a question, kind of advice, and I'm not sure if this is more a Monica question or more an auditor question. But there were several references to the 125,000 transferred out of recreation. But what that is staffing and overhead. And so it perhaps, it doesn't tell that picture necessarily by just saying having to transfer out. And I wonder if you would advise handling that differently so that it conveys more directly what it is.
This is kind of one of those things that you can do it more. There's more than one answer that's correct. You can do this where you basically, the recreation fund makes a transfer every year to the general fund, basically to cover those types of costs. That's kind of the easy way of doing it. The hard way is to actually, as you go throughout the year, try and allocate those costs and split them between the general fund and the recreation fund. That's more work. Either one is correct and allowable and are both Oregon budget law and under governmental accounting principles. So I can't say there's one right answer to it. It just always is, that, when you have that transfer, and it's a pretty significant transfer between the two, given, the overall size of the district.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like it makes sense with the size of the staff team that we have, the way that it's handled. It's just, I think it's hard when it's presented as it is. If it's then not explained, then it could be a red flag when it's really not a red flag if we know what it is.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of title that we can call it, and that's pointed out in the audit report or something like that, that is clear enough on it, or do it as a separate transfer instead of just worked into the budget. But I'd probably get Monica's advice on how she would want to handle that. I'm not as big of a fan of the last version of it, of the doing individual transfers multiple times throughout the year, or allocations rather, multiple times throughout the year for each of those things. Just given our staff size, it's and everything there, that seems just like a lot of work on it. Monica, do you have any advice or opinion on that?
It is, as Brad said, it's it's a matter of preference within the structure, right? Within the district. We put a fair amount of work into calculating what that overhead cost actually is. And we look at that every year when we do budget, and we include the budgeted amounts going forward. We look at the past if we were close, and we have not yet fully charged recreation for that overhead cost of the district. So, and I don't believe that is the intent, is to fully charge them, but it's definitely to recognize as much as we can the true cost of recreation. So we're clearly transparent on what that program is. And we can definitely talk about if you prefer to not see it as a transfer and would like to see it as a regular expense that is done, allocated maybe monthly or more consistently. And that's fine too. Whatever it is that the board would like to see, we can do.
Yeah, if it was a total amount per month or something, I could see doing that. I just don't want, like, when Monica says that we do it, that we're very careful on how we do that. We have like part of our copy machine going to them, part of the, the multiple admin employees, part of legal, part of, all of these different things. And every month, if we had had to be billing out part, part of the $75 copy machine bill to recreation. I don't get that deep. I've got a hand raised for Joe Caskey here as well.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that I guess in the notes to the financial statements, we do discuss the purpose of this transfer in note 5, so on like page 22. So I guess while it's presented in the financial statements as just kind of a transfer, there's a little more detail presented there, and I don't know if that maybe is the clarity that you're looking for. Because I think that's pretty common for us to disclose the nature of those transfers in these financial statements. So.
I think it's mostly like, I think the board members know, it's for someone, a member of the public who might be wanting to look, that they would be able to find the answer as well. Just making sure that we can convey that.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
All right.
All right. Thank you all so much.
All right, well, yeah, thank you, everyone. Joe, Brad, and Monica, if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're certainly welcome to. I think we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we are now to the advisory council portion. All right.
All right.
So just kind of remind what we said via email, not that these are super firm guidelines, but kind of general guidelines. Trying to have each person, if you'd like to speak, present for up to 5 minutes. I'll set a timer, but if we go over, it's not a big deal, you know, it's just so that we don't go super long. Plus, if one person speaks for 10 minutes, then the other two might feel like they need to speak for 10 minutes, so we're just gonna kind of target 5 minutes. And then, you know, a few minutes for questions after that for that specific person. And then also have a bit of time at the end if we want to kind of have more discussion or circle back. Because, you know, folks might build on each other and might want to ask clarifying questions later. You want to say anything like people that be sort of like follow up or after the consideration? Follow up after the. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's hard to say when we don't really know some. Yeah, what we share. Yeah. Any questions before we get started? We haven't been so noticed. Yes, what goes up first? I'm gonna grab this.
Yeah, of course, I had to put slides in because that's the only thing I know how to do. I wanted to spend, having sat through the community advisory council work and some of the other conversations, I needed to get grounded on what the facts were about what tax lot data looks like and where we could identify where voters sit as part of communication and a bunch of other things. So this is just about facts. All right, and Mark gave me some data. It came from county records, so 10,000, slightly over 10,000 tax lots in the mix of data, of which about 73 different categorizations of what properties are commercial, undeveloped, vacant land, commercial, you know, did best guess to try to identify residential, i.e. people where are voters, because we said we wanted to be focused on voters versus businesses. And did this histogram. I tried to use the standard Excel histogram, had to toss that, had to do my own. And he's gonna have the spreadsheet so he can do whatever you guys want to do for Paul. Interesting thing about the 10,000, there are 169 properties that have $0 that go to the park district. 0. In the most expensive valued county, I'm perplexed by that number. There are 575 total that have paid, that are assessed at $10,000 or less, meaning they're paying like $10 a year. Of which most of that is non-residential. And 865 lots that are assessed at over $500,000, assessed values of over $500,000, and most of that being residential. So that was kind of the quick split. The next page. So when you start looking at what the tax burden is, most of it lands on residential properties, not business properties. And there are a few short list properties of residential that pay more than $1,000 a year. That's a short list. 27 businesses, I'll come back to that. And I think from a communication perspective, it's important to look at not what is the average or the median, but what 75 or 80% pay when you're talking about a bond that you're going up. That's a personal opinion. So let's look at you're gonna see a bunch of charts. I'm gonna walk through one. So this first bar, $0 to $60, a la $5 a month or less. This is how many properties pay that. This is the current permanent levy. Then between 5 up to 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So I chunk them out into $5 increments. Mark will have the spreadsheet that if you guys want to see it in $50 annual chunks, you guys can decide which way you want to look at that. I chose the 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks a month.
Are you willing to send this out? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
A little bit, okay.
We can figure out the best way to do that. So this is what the distribution looks like. So yes, there is somebody that's paying $1,400 a year. There is one property. And then
Just for Parks and Rec levy.
this is Parks and Recs levy only.
Or base rate, whatever you call it.
Yeah, this is the permanent levy base rate. This then represents what percentage of the properties that is. So, you know, you got 20% here. By the time you get into the $10 or less a month, you're getting close to the 80% of the people are paying $10 a month. That's a great story. That's an easy thing to say. That's why I wanted to add what these line charts look like. So that's what it looks like overall in the residential side. If you saw the business, they're all way over here. I mean, there's nothing except for like 1 or 2 on this end. So it's really swayed on the business side on the low end. From your last board meeting, I heard you guys talking about different bond rates, so I took those numbers, jammed them up. What does that same chart look like? Next page, for a $39 million bond. So that's what's in your packet. So now you get to 75% of the residential properties would pay $20 or less per month. That's your kind of messaging you can be looking. See, this is the kind of shit I do, and then I don't have to 90% pay $30 or less, right? That's currently 2 times what the current levy is, right? So that gives you, and you can start to see what these charts look like as you go through, right? Then what does it look like now when you trip into the $43 million bond? Oh, this is the non-residential, the business side. You can really see how it's way the heck over here, right? So the conversation needs to be more about resident. When you put these averages, I think this is off residential because it's really not what they're seeing. So that's why I think it's important to look at these separate and what the numbers are. But there is somebody paying a load of money. It happens to be a state-owned.
Oh, big track that went in.
Or maybe it's the park or something like that, right? But
Those are the zeros.
but there is a $13,000 figure out there for, it's from state. And this was the 0.72, which was the 39 that I pulled out of your last board meeting. So the next page, Mark, then says, what does that look like for 43? And now you start to see it even sliding out further, right? That now you're down to 63% of the residents who pay $20, which then gives people notices over 37%. So paying attention to where the 75-80% mark, I think is an important thing. When you get to this number, you now have tripped up to 90% of the people are paying $1 a day. That may or may not be the message you want to send, given that's not what they're paying right now. Don't know. I'm paying attention to my time. The next page is, so now this is the busy one. So all I did was look at those percentages and said, this is what the current levy looks like. This is median. That is 75%. Okay. This first line is what would a 39 million look like? The next one is a 0.76. I think that was your 41, and this other one was your 43. This is what failed. That's what it looked like from the last bond measure. I thought that was an important reference point. Just to be aware of where, where not to go. Right? So really, paying attention to what those numbers look like for the residential side. Okay, last page, I feel like I'm gonna echo what Rachel said. Get the number down as low as you can. Do the most basic things. I don't know to what degree. You ask the architects, okay, what could we get for 35 million? Like flip it around to say. Give them a number, now tell us what we can get for that. I do think for these 27 businesses, I recommend that the board do a specific personal outreach to those 27. Because they might be big employers and you don't want them having conversations with their employees about what to do or not do. Ask the county to zero in on these properties that are paying less than $10 a year, not a month, a year. Because not only does that affect the Parks District, it's affecting every, including the schools. That's absurd to me. It seems like those are a great list of properties to have the county go look at to say, are they assessed accurately? And the people do say that the pools and trails are of equal importance if you opt to do an operations levy as well. I would say focus it on the trails only, because to say I need something for the pools, and the pool's gonna be closed for 2 years. The cognitive disconnect on that is like, say, what? Why do you need that extra money to run a pool that's gonna be closed for 2 years? Because I know it says 18 months, it's probably gonna be 2 years. It's gonna be closed for 2 years, so why do you need that extra option? I don't get it. But people say are both are important. That's the only. Okay, thank you. Questions? I know that was like a. And then the next 2 pages, back up, Mark, I think you've got this, Mark.
I don't have, I didn't put those in the,
Okay,
yeah,
so in the, oh, you didn't give that to,
they're not in this
if
presentation.
anybody wants to see, Mark has what was defined as residential and what was defined as non-resident, if you're curious as to how those got sliced out.
Yeah.
So,
The data set remove Cascade Locks.
Yeah.
well, because they're not part of part,
Okay,
this
yeah.
is Parks and
Well,
Rec
you
district, yes.
said county, that's
Oh,
why,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to be sure that.
Yes,
they
it
were.
is, these numbers represent the Parks and Recs district levy rates as provided by the county to that man over there that gave you the list.
Although it's possible that those zero payment people could be, the deferred, if you're over a certain age, you make under a certain amount of money per year, you don't have to pay property taxes. And then when you pass away, your property is sold and they're paid back. So I mean, I don't know if it is,
I don't know how, but
but it's
the county
possible.
would know that.
Yeah, it could be those.
That is possible, if that's hard to imagine, because not only do you have to make under a certain amount, your net worth needs to be under a certain amount, and if your house is over that amount. You may not necessarily follow.
Yeah, we just have to look at them individually.
It's also like the federal lands, like all of the state, the federal forests around here, all the Ridley County forestry parcels. Pretty much all the government owned parcels that are in this county that don't pay taxes.
Yeah.
Including our parks.
That was one.
I just felt like it was, I've heard a lot of comments about, well, no one pays, it was like, no, yeah, there is actually somebody out there that pays $13,000 a year, okay, who knew that? So it's relative to language and just being sensitive to how you put things in communication, what you say in group settings, how things are reflected. I'm a big fan of get everybody anchored on the facts, so facts.
In a brief response, what would you suggest? Just out of curiosity, I'd like to hear, like, what would bond, or what amount would you think would be a reasonable ask given the charts?
To the 38 program. I'm in the 30s, let's put it that way. I think, as stupid of a marketing thing, the difference between 39 and 40 is kind of, but I think I'm in the 30s and I'd be playing around with what number can you get to that gets this figure to the, this. If you could really say, hey, you're gonna pay $15 or less a month, and you could get that to the 90%.
Yeah.
It's gonna be slam dunk. It'll go right through. I believe that. If you could have that as your key message. Looking at this
What we're talking
on the residential,
But I think, that's the sophistication though that this adds by not just saying it's X increase, it's X increase that will be experienced by, or Y increase that will be experienced by 90% of.
Right. And when you can say that, then you're kind of going, all right, I now know what I'm doing for a majority of my community, not just the middle. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
Right, you're up next.
I'm next, okay,
Very nice.
right. So I just put something together, I'm gonna read, because it's much easier for me to get my thoughts together. And this has already been said by Mark at pretty much at one of his meetings that I was at, but I used to be an ideologue when I was very young. And now I'm just a lot more of a realist. And so that's why I've come up with this, what I'm gonna say here. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, why we have to convey the bad and the ugly. The extent of the deteriorating condition of the pool and the lack of funds to maintain parks, trails, and the pool have to be communicated. The current situation has evolved for numerous reasons. Given a pool to maintain and operate was one thing, but adding parks and trails without additional funds has been quite another. And then the school district asked, and the parks district graciously accepted the community education program for recreation, which came with 3 years worth of funding. I know the Parks District was hoping that the last levy asked would motivate people to continue funding that program and other maintenance operations, but it didn't. The public needs to know that Parks and Rec District understands now that the ask was too high, and that a new bond ask is significantly lower. It now only includes a pared down version of an aquatic structure. The public needs to know what will be eliminated if future funding asks, either bonds or levies, are not approved. Talking about cuts is painful, it's scary, but the gravity of the situation is, if not conveyed, the public will not see the need to vote for additional funds. This information should not be soft pedaled. Parks and Rec Board and staff is bent over backwards to put in unpaid overtime and give the community all the amenities that it wants. But the cost is now overwhelming the funds to maintain the current trails, parks, and recreation programs and the pool facility and its aquatics offerings. I've been faced in the positions I've had looking at project and program deficits that looked 5, 10, 15 years down the road in the city programs. But you have to ask the question, you have to make the decision, and you have to communicate to the public what the reality is. It's stressful, it's hard, but it's owed to the public. So they can be informed and make an educated decision about the future they want. When you're asking people for money, please convey in a very serious way what is happening before the next ask for funds. I think in the long run, being brutally honest about the situation will allow you to know you did everything you possibly could to maintain the current facilities and programs, and will give you the best chance of passing bonds and levies. There you go. Bad and ugly, you gotta make it real.
But what do you say, I mean, I fully agree, 100%. I mean, but what do you say to the folks that, you know, well, it hasn't failed yet? I mean, we can't be so prescriptive about what will fail because we don't know. I mean, the entire pool could be detonating as we speak.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to know that. And if they haven't looked in the bowels of the pool, they will not understand it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I guess the question, how often does the staff do evenings, weekends, off hours to repair something so that the pool can stay on its regular schedule versus, yes, something's breaking. We're gonna work on it Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 until it's done, and the pool will stay closed until it's done. I mean, there's zero, there seems to be little not desire, but at some point you gotta make that not do the Herculean effort, right?
Yeah.
And I get the sense you guys just do so many diving catches, which I think is kind of a funny concept of the pool, but
Yeah.
but I really think there needs to be, I'm 100%, we need this, like repairs need to happen on standard time, so you're not paying somebody else's overtime.
I mean, and I think to that point, that though, it's like doing the Herculean effort, but when you have like youth, kids who are relying on you to keep the pool open, it becomes a different
You know what?
It's hard, it's a hard choice, like from a staff,
Yeah,
from a
choice.
staffing perspective, you know.
That's what change parents' minds.
Right.
You know, right, but I mean, I understand and I appreciate what you guys have done, but that doesn't change minds. It won't make people vote,
Yeah.
when they, for this, if they think, well, they'll just keep doing it.
Mhm.
No
Or
problem.
bailing wire.
More bailing wire, more
chewing gum.
putting the door back on instead of doing some of the things that you normally would do. You
So
know,
there's things that can happen after the fact, and then there's, I think, part of what you're saying is, let's add some data to the message that you're trying to get across, which is how many hours a week are you spending in overtime? How many, and try and bring some of those facts to the forefront, so people can use that to know.
and I think that, you know, you're gonna go out for another bond, but if it doesn't pass, you guys have to have made some decisions about if the next thing's gonna be $200,000 to fix the pool, that, no, we're done.
Yeah.
Or if, you know, we can't be open as much as we are because we can't do that. I mean, you guys need to you're gonna have to make that decision if it doesn't pass, but if you can state what it is, you know what it is, and if it doesn't pass, that is what's gonna happen.
Mhm.
And one of the hardest things is that with the tent structure being what it is, it could be like, it goes back to being a summer pool.
Yeah.
The tent structure was all about making it year round, so
Right.
it's a summer only pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and they're just, like I said, they're stressful, they're hard decisions to make, and you're gonna keep it, trying to go on as long as you can. But if you don't draw a line in the sand, people will think there never's gonna be a line in the sand. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here.
So I mean, could it almost be a dollar threshold, like some piece fails?
Yeah.
It can be anything you want it to be, whatever.
Right, and I'm suggesting, you know, a dollar threshold to then say, you know,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll be getting into that,
Yeah.
and even today, we're gonna start talking about what will be cut if things don't pass. But it's like, those are two different discussions that are intertwined, right, cause that's the, like, how long will we keep it running? With the money we have in the bank that could keep it running,
Yeah.
maybe, right?
Maybe.
But we definitely need to have it. I think let's go on to the next, we always kind of circle back. Is there anyone that really has to leave early? I'm trying to get an order that's listed here. Brian, are you okay with that? You good with that? Okay.
Unless I run out of batteries.
Okay.
We got extra, so we'll charge you up.
in a good spot though.
Charger, you know.
So next up would be Nancy Roach.
Well, I'm gonna move.
Nancy, you're fine, you don't worry about us back there, spectators.
No. Yeah. Besides, I was brought up, you don't talk with your back. You never leave those lessons behind. I made notes because it's late for me. I wanted to speak about first the bond and then the levy, and most of this is gonna be stuff that you've heard already. With the bond, I think that the messages that I'm hearing from all of you are to be frugal, cost effective, efficient, and thinking for the long run. And I grew up playing at a community center that people in the 50s had the vision to fund and build. And that community center is still there and fulfilling things. And I think that's the argument for not doing things like the tent up front, because that's short-term thinking. And it's not, people understand the need to be energy efficient now, and they understand the need to do things that are gonna live for a while and not fail after 25 years. I agree completely with, I think, what Rachel said about deferring on the nice to haves. Because it shows, first of all, it shows that you're thinking about the day-to-day costs to taxpayers. And it also gives people a chance to fundraise for community things, which is a great way to bring people together. And I can see the foundation playing a key role in that, in terms of saying, okay, let's make a splash pad a reality for the kids in this community. And I see that as a way to really build the community and bring ownership of the pool to everybody, which I think is really important. People don't feel ownership of the pool. I was talking to somebody yesterday who said, I was talking to a lady in the bathroom who was one of the aerobics ladies, and she said, I'm not gonna pay for the pool. And it's like, don't you feel like it's your pool? Don't you feel like you need to take care of it? And clearly that sense of ownership isn't there. And then when it comes to the levy, what Kate said, we don't know that the district is running on fumes, and people aren't gonna vote for a levy unless they understand that. And I think the levy, although it got more votes last time than the pool, it was minor. And I also think that both the pool and the levy are important, but I think it's hard to sew them together. So if the pool is closed for a year, why do you need the levy now? That's a question my husband asked me and I couldn't answer it. Parks and Recs is exploring other options for raising money that might push back the need for the full levy. Maybe, you know, explore that a little bit more before you go forward with the full levy model. It's really simple to just move forward right now. I mean, that's my thing is always, let's do this, it's simple. Let's do the bond and the levy, and it's really simple, but it's not really when you look at it. Selling two measures is more complicated and harder. I was in a lot of the discussions on Nextdoor the last time where I heard Bruce saying about the need for a bond and a levy. I mean, can't they keep their act together, but they need this and this? So I think that makes it a harder sell. And the survey after the election last time, what Coco said, there's a tremendous amount of support out there for the pool. I haven't seen an upswell of support for the levy. I didn't see that in the survey. When I talk to people about this, I don't get oh wow, that would be really cool. I think the ideas that were just discussed here about making us all feel the pain of the pool being closed, is not a bad thing to do. And I personally think that if you piss off the pickleballers and get them engaged, they will be rabid about making sure the pickleball courts are open. But I agree with the trails. The trails are a real value proposition to the whole community, so.
Any questions, discussion, back to?
Made me think of another user group that we need to reach out to protect our parks. Thank you.
You'd also though remind me, if the pool is closed, I mean, some of the hard knows, if the pool is closed, those operating funds could also be used to run trails.
Right.
So there's a little bit like, okay, so if indeed you're that much in the hole, then there's a whole other conversation. It's like, how is it we're allowing that, there's a little bit like, okay. It's like, hey, it's a teenager that wants to buy a car, but can't buy the car insurance, like, yeah, no, that's not gonna cut it. So there's a little bit like, all right, balance the budget. What would a balanced budget look like if you didn't get anything? And make that exquisitely clear about, is it reduced hours? Is it no more of this? Is it what would, and with the pool and parks being equal to the community, you gotta pull back on both. You can't just pull back on trails because that will create a whole nother blowback.
Yeah.
Great, Leah?
Yeah, I don't know if I need to stand up. I don't have anything to present, but my representation in this night is really for the sports teams that use the pool and as a voice for them. I felt very strongly that we should not close the pool just because of the disconnect it would create from habits, from, all sorts of things with sports teams especially. And some of these kids, rely on this opportunity for scholarship and getting into college, and it has a great effect on them, both in their well-being as well as their futures. So going into this experience, the advisory council, I really hope that there was a way to avoid all that. I now understand that that's not the case. So in the absence of that, I'd like to ask the board to consider during the time in which the pool will be closed, assuming this gets passed, ways in which we can help support the athletes to keep their seasons going, to keep their careers going, and support them through that. For example, potentially allocating funds to transportation, school buses to get to pools that they need to go to be able to continue their seasons. I mean, the water polo team, for example, and I'm personally very connected to this with my daughter plays. But, they've won 6 state championships and they're now on track. They just won a 4th at states and they're on track to keep this team going and be very successful. So it matters a lot to these kids as parents. So I would ask in absence of, not closing the pool, if some funds could be allocated to help them continue their progress and their support. Both the swim team as well as the water polo teams.
And along those lines, wouldn't that, I mean, I guess that would be a potential reason to even have the levy. I mean, if you're pitching the levy at the same time, I mean, if we could pivot some of the funds towards those kind of things in addition to trail upkeep, that'd be another reason to have the bond or the.
Or you might say that's what you're doing with ops dollars
Yeah.
for those two.
And the other thing about holding off on the levy that makes me leery, or at least I could see going for the levy, and if it doesn't pass, at least we have another year, to kind of catch our breath and try again. Because really, if we don't get the levy and we get the pool, then we're kind of hooped.
Yeah.
And so, I hear the idea of postponing that, but I don't realistically think that, I think we're better off really attempting the levy the
It's
first
not-
time period, and for all the reasons, and if it's for supporting those athletes and the off time and the trails and the rec programs and all the other things we want to keep maintaining, even with the pool being closed. My gut tells me we still go for it.
And that's a great selling point for the levy, vote for the levy, because it will let our high schoolers continue their, continue all of that. You gotta have specifics.
Right, sorry, no, I'm following up at exactly the other part of the thing I have to say is that it's been my opinion all along, no, it's great, I'm glad you brought that up, is that it's been my opinion all along is that there's communication, some real strategic communication that needs to happen with this whole thing, and that sounds very obvious, but I think there's a great opportunity to get data involved, like really clear pictures that as a person who has used all Parks and Recs and big pool fan, I walked into this experience knowing so little about how Parks and Rec actually operates. And I think that's true for 80% of the members in the community. I really don't think they get it, like how it works. And so I think there's some communication has to be
And
very.
funding, I mean, how.
And funding,
does
it's just a mystery.
Yeah, it
And
does- it
so
helps know. I mean, they
Yes.
don't,
it's a total mystery, and that doesn't have to be the case. And so I think we have a big challenge there, but I also think it's very possible to help change minds and help people understand how this works in support of their coach. So
and just also to piggyback off of what you just said is with the levy delaying. My concern is we run into a little bit of a fatigue issue, but
yeah,
also, we just learned that the city is now going to be putting out a levy for something.
yeah.
And that is,
If there were, I would have everybody in her vote yes on all of the stuff. I am not the arbiter of the river. So I think it's easiest. It's just hard to tell people that you want to increase their taxes twice without some really specific,
Yeah.
very specific benefits. Getting kids, that's something, keeping the trails open, that's something, although that great article recently, or the interview with the volunteers who do the Indian Creek Trail. You're gonna hear about that, because it's like, well, you don't need people to maintain the trail, these volunteers are doing it.
right, and there's always that dark side to
I
any
know,
of these great things that we do to involve the community in Parks and Rec.
it
There's
just,
this shadow that can be,
it made me laugh, because
Yeah.
that was my first thought, this is what the advisory committee has done to me. What is that, I don't, I said, so.
Welcome.
And just also, especially the board knows, we're gonna have quite a bit more discussion about the whole levy question. We're gonna talk some about it today, and then we're likely to have a work session in early December.
Hmm.
And then we'll discuss it again at our December meeting, the decisions then, so. We will be talking about this.
Will the December open house talk about both the bond and the levy?
It's gonna talk about both the bond and the need for dollars for maintenance and programs.
Okay, all right.
You know, whether we're gonna be able to say which thing will depend on whether we make that decision at that work session.
Yeah, okay.
Hopefully we will, but we'll see how the discussion goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, just one comment on the way to do the levy is that when I reread everything, and when I reread all the next verse stuff, the most common comment was tax the tourists, you know, figure out a way to tax the tourists. And there are a lot of issues around a prepared food and beverage tax in the city. I know that's one of the options you're looking at, that there are pros and cons there. That is a way to say we are trying to tax the tourists. And that could be.
And why I also think that raising the out of district rates to get them, because that means someone's from not in the district, what we charge for the use pool for out of district, raise those up, right? Those are ways to tap into non-residents, right, using the services.
Yeah.
Lindsay, can I ask you a question?
Yes, and then I want to add one more thing before we
Yeah,
move
no,
on.
go,
Sorry.
go, I don't,
No,
keep the
please.
flow going.
Okay, fine, I could forget, it's true. Before I forget. So one other thing I would add is if the levy, and the bond that we pass and the pool does indeed get shut down for reconstruction, I would also ask that we defer that potentially to postseason so that there might be a way the kids to
Limited
continue
to
their
one
season.
season.
Yeah,
So what would
Yes.
what would the ideal timing
so
be?
water polo ends middle of November, swim team ends
March.
February.
February.
So it would be probably a great time to start construction in March, but then it also may seem like it's right before summer, why are they starting now? But it could be the timing works out perfectly, because there needs to be some planning done, but that's just a request, like, could we get through at least one season, and only have one season out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and there is a pool and an outdoor pool in the Dalles, so there's a substitute in the
Yes,
summertime, but
yes,
there's not a substitute.
correct.
The other time, really, I mean, there's too many of it small and.
That's right, so there are a lot of options, and swimming in the Dalles in November is all. They're tough, but
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, you mentioned communication, talked about this in our first meeting, strategic communication. And it's, to me, it's really critical. I mean, we've had a short fuse, only until May. People get sick. So is it the responsibility of the advisory group to get these centers of influence, like the coaches and team leaders and chairs or school, swim team, the water polo team, the senior swimming team, you know, and bring them all into a room so that they have a moment with the advisory group to say, we're gonna give you this handout here, this is what we're trying to get accomplished, and then ask for their advice. How do we get to the group? How do we get to your parents? And then how do your parents get to the other groups of people that you're respected by?
yes, I think there are key groups who can be really influencers for us essentially, right? And then I think there's also the development of just talking points for them, so everyone's coming out with the same message, but also purchased, honestly, you know, media attention, and advertising, so to speak, with the right messages to help convey this, but you know, the hard hitting photos, the points, the data that we're talking about. So there's both the messaging as well as the media.
So I have an answer to that, Brian. Get that flyer to all those people you just talked about.
Yeah.
And get them to the December 10th
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, that was kind of my next.
That is,
So I was gonna
Critical,
select to Marcy.
critical. Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
Marcy, how do we make that happen?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those people are there, and then someone like yourself, Lindsay, say, well, here's the coach of the water polo team, and move them around the advisory group so that they have a chance to hear other community members talking about, why am I giving my time to have this,
Yes.
be an advocate for this.
Yeah.
because the presentation that's being prepared is gonna be really, really good. You know, I've been working with Marcy and Christy, and there's numerous people in this room that have been working on this. And it's gonna be pretty hard hitting and give lots of good information. And then people, if they're still doubters, they get a tour of the pool. If they wanna help raise money for the foundation, they can go there. If they just wanna help get other people to vote yes, there's gonna be a group for them to go. So, you know, and if they have more questions, the advisory group will all be there, a lot of board members will be there, so, yeah, just get them to that.
Can we get the local radio there, and can we get the newspaper there?
Go ahead, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, go for it.
Okay.
You want,
Yes,
all right.
you,
Yeah.
Could you write
do
it?
it?
Well, and what,
Right, I'm writing people's names
because
down.
if they're not able to broadcast live, what I was thinking of, at least during the presentation part, is, you know, there's, for those of us in the Upper Valley, December is always a questionable time to be driving down. It was, I'd hoped to Odell, but not, you know, it's okay. I just think it is going to limit some of the Upper Valley participation.
Yeah.
It would be great if the presentation part was video recorded and then shared so people can watch it on YouTube shortly afterwards. So, and they're not getting it watered down and highly productionalized. It's like,
Yeah.
this is the owl version of what's happening right now, and that's gonna go out shortly after the meeting.
So we're trying, we're trying to make this presentation, I think everyone that's been working on it, so that you've got the PowerPoint going along, and then what kind of basically you're gonna say is gonna be tier 2, so that it can be taken on the road. That I could take it on the road, you could take it on the road.
No. There's too much opportunity. That actually had some challenges where the different presenters were putting their own spin on the data. That is really risky. And it runs that you've got the delay. So I would highly recommend that you video record that one presentation, and that's what goes on the road. And I'm gonna show that one, and then I'm gonna answer questions afterwards. But I'm not trying to become as knowledgeable about the material as the person who's standing up there on December 10th.
That's a good point, right?
There's an audio visual group in the high school.
I just would be,
That might be able to record it.
to take out the variation, sorry, I don't mean to step into your time. Sorry.
Let's try to move to the last two folks, advisory council members, and then we can have a little bit more discussion with the, and as a group, we still have 2 more people to hear from. Chris Carlin, you're up next.
All right, I think I'll be short, at least I hope so. The one thought that I had was because there's sort of, we'd really like to have this big building with lots of stuff in it. And seems like that's not gonna happen. As you're building whatever you're designing for the new pool, don't assume that's the last thing that will ever happen there. And make sure that that whoever is, whatever architect's working on is, they're not necessarily thinking, I know exactly what we're going to add, but make sure things like utilities are at the edges of the building. So that whenever you choose to do it, it's not, we've got to take out cement and walls and stuff to add whatever we want to add. So like the splash pad is one idea, like plumb for it to the edge of the building. But not, you know, but don't put it in, and then the foundation can raise the money and build a splash pad, but you're essentially reducing long-term costs by spending a little bit in the design phase. So that's my 2 cents for tonight.
Great.
I guess I'm the last one. Don't worry about, I'll just stay comfortable with them. I have a couple housekeeping comments to make. One is, Marcy and all the advisory group, my apologies for all the extra emails that you've been getting from me. I got a new phone. That's all I'm gonna say. I got a new phone. And it's not working. And then, for the, Parks and Rec Board, I want you to know that, between Kate and Marcy and Mark and who am I leaving out in this front row, orchestration, done an exceptional job, and I've sat in on a lot of these kinds of meetings in my lifetime. And my only concern, and it's been from the beginning, is how short the fuse is on this sort of, so our conversation, and we come up with good ideas, they really need to be assigned to somebody. So that we don't wait till the next meeting, or we don't wait till December 10th. If we're gonna get coaches together, who can help us do that? And if there's a list, and people can pick up, you know, the coaches list and say, I'll do the water polo team. Just say, that would be great. Mark, if this is a PDF or something, I would be happy to take this down to print and have them made into 2 by 3 foot. type, and then see what I can do about the downtown group, putting them up in their stores, storefronts. And then if anybody has any suggestions on where else we might wanna post it, like pool or
School, downtown, coffee shops.
I don't know if they can do school.
Yeah, that's probably.
Check it out, coffee.
Yeah.
I can send you the PDF.
Can it?
Yep.
Okay. So that was one, three, okay, and then I've already kind of gone through some of my stuff, so I can be even more brief, but, let's see. So, I never thought of myself as an elderly person, but now that I'm hooked up and I'm wandering, I am that category. My favorite music that comes on is oldies, and I'm going, oh crap. Oldies are goodies. It's good. All right, so one of the things, I don't think the community fully understands is just how tight this Parks and Rec has been running this organization for a long time. I mean, this might not be the best way to narrate it, but you're essentially running a fundamentally obsolete infrastructure. And I was kind of queuing ideas up today about the middle and upper valley. A farmer would never let their tractor get this far down the road. The baling wire screwdriver shoot down the folks. You got to get a new tractor. You know, and that's how I present it to the middle and upper valley. It's like, you know, we've run this tractor as long as we can, and now it's time to replace it. That's just long. Somebody brought up, maybe Kate, you know, bond timing. Who else is considering a bond in the springtime? And can you get around to them and say, is this a critical issue bond for you, or just something on your Christmas list that you'd like to have? Would you be willing to put it off to the fall or following year? Fewer asks that go on that spring, the better off you are. And this is really coming back to the Parks and Rec Board. This is really your job to find out who's issuing other bonds out there and see if they're willing to just back it off and give this Park and Rec the best shot at it. Now, if I take pool down to its basic element, for me, it's public safety. We have so many lakes and rivers and streams, water play fronts for our kids. And I think some of you heard this one. The most disastrous thing, most heartfelt ache I ever deal with is reading a newspaper where somebody been drowned. I mean, that's just it. And fortunately, we haven't had a lot of drownings when you consider how much water we have around us. We have 68,000 turns at the pool door. You have almost 70,000 cars going through the parking lot out on the waterfront. And that's just the event side. So we are a water-based community. And not to have a swimming pool that gets these kids, when we're raising ours, I said, I want you to hold the head of our water up long enough for me to get to you. And when you go up on your own, I want you to go swim back to the bank, or at least stay up long enough so the throw toe and go scenario can take place for you. You probably don't know this, but the woman sitting next to me is my wife. And she's been my advisor for 45 years. And she also took our kids through swim lessons and swim team. And they are, we have wonderful aquatic backgrounds. Karen also was a meet director. She has been a meet director at Federal Way at the Weyerhaeuser Pool for as many as 1,200 entries. So she's got as much chlorine in her veins as I have in mine. And so I always ask questions of her. How does she feel? And I'm 73. She's much younger. And I didn't say it to Marcy, but I was critical of the night lights over the pickleball courts being open. And she reminded me that when you built Eagle Park, that there's a timer up there and you pay for that timer. I didn't know. And I'll bet there's a lot of retirees who are living on pinch pennies don't realize just how well Parks and Rec is running this facility. You don't brag. You don't brag.
You don't get explain enough either.
Unabashed self-promotion. So I characterize it. Now, back to some other comments here. If you could give us, I used to call this the 30-second, 60-second, and 90-second piece that the average person on the street can pick up and look at it. and you give them a 30-second pitch, that's all I need to walk away. I mean, I agree with Chris. You get us all on here, we're trying to figure out a 5 to 10 minute spiel, we get it, we're gonna get across it. So that would be my other ask, is help us with that moving narrative. Thanks.
I think Coco gave us some great ideas.
Yeah.
30, 60 second stuff, some great ideas.
Yeah.
That was probably the.
Mark, who was the group that you guys have done a levy with in the past? Was it you and the school, the school district and Parks and Rec? Didn't they do a levy together at one point too?
We,
There was a lot.
capital bond, in 1998.
You mean at the same time?
Yeah,
we did-
on the same.
Yeah, the same ballot measure.
I joined.
It was
Yeah.
very small, it was 9 cents per thousand, but it was to refinance the debt for the pool. And to put in some field improvements at the elementary, middle schools, upgrading windows.
Well, I mean, because I agree with Mark, I mean, I've been thinking, I've always seen the pool as a health and safety aspect of public safety, the lessons and all this stuff, and so the thought of it closing down, I always think of the first thing is the kids who aren't gonna learn how to swim, and the adults who don't know how to swim aren't gonna get the opportunity. I mean, knowing the other thing that's, I mean, I think in this county, one of the things that's gonna be big is the public health, things, or the health and safety with the sheriff department and just how much money they're gonna be potentially need. Is there any possible way we can link those two concepts?
So, I mean, yes, is there a possibility? Yes. The question is whether or not that's a good idea. What we heard last time was it's too complicated. There's too many different things. That was just us doing it within parks of having like, another park or a trail or acquisition. And when the county went out for their levy, in 2018, and they had the OSU extension and search and rescue and police, and the sheriff's department, and all these different things. And then they had 2 measures going at the same time. They both failed. And when they came back 2 years later and said yes, the sheriff's department, and had a one focused message and one taxing measure at the time, it passed. So I think that there is some advantage to partnering with others. People think that you're being efficient, you're doing stuff, but when you spread it out amongst a lot of different things, it spreads out the message a lot more, and it makes it much larger. Like we were going to be doing something like with sheriff for a new building or different things like that, it would be tripling the rate, quadrupling the rate. So if we want to keep the rate low and we want to keep our message simple, it's focusing on our.
But it is one of the messages things. Well, I want to build off one thing Brian said, and this is a very sort of 30,000 foot thing, but I think it's really important. There's a perception that Rec, generally speaking, is on their heels. You guys are in a very defensive, stature with people because of what happened last time, and you are doing great works. And so unfortunately, I realize that some of that is communication driven, and it's driven by having enough funds to be proactive in your communication. But I see it as true that you guys are kind of on your heels and you're doing great things. So I would love it if over time we can kind of shift that energy and how you communicate it as the really positive, and everything that is going on somehow not funded because you are doing great work and it's undervalued. And ultimately the great value and it's going around, right?
And just to add on to that slightly, I've done elections, local elections, and when I saw what was happening 2 years ago, my heart went out to everybody involved in the campaign, because I'm sure you all went into it with your hearts leading and good things on, and doing the right thing, and then you got landed on by a ton of bricks and a lot of nasty personal stuff. And I would just say, don't let the campaign deal with that. Don't let you guys, don't take it personally, because we need you as a community. As a community, we need you guys to be leading with your hearts. And there are people out there who are used to being yelled at, and they can do the campaign. Let them get yelled at. So.
Probably trying to wrap up unless anyone has anything else. dying to say or ask?
If I could just one, this, what the city, a former board member of Parks and Rec is now on city council. And she tried in a public meeting to have some discussions between the city and district and the city council. Did not seem very interesting.
I would characterize it pretty differently. It was what she was trying to do. I've since the last meeting had two, I would say, very good discussions with two members of that group.
Okay,
I think what I have experienced is a desire to work together. We just need the time to do it and not be rushed, you know, that's a big thing.
okay. That's the way it looked to me when I was watching.
I could see where, I was in the audience that night, and I could see where it looked that way to you, but I do agree that there was a very specific thing. There, it was, she was wanting to kind of hit pause on all of their stuff while they came and talked to us, and they did not want to hit pause at all.
Right.
They still want to work with us and talk with us, but they are on a track and moving along,
Okay.
which I can respect.
Alright.
Also, just clarification on the bond measures, we do talk to everybody, on when they're all planning to go out, that does change, it is somewhat fluid. But, McGann has put together a list, and no one else is going out in this spring. We are the only ones that are looking at spring, the other two that are looking at going out are both in November. And they still have not made up their mind yet, but that is the school district on a bond, which will be out of cycle. They normally do bonds every 20 years. Their last one was in 2016. And so this will be, and that one passed very well because it was another bond was retiring. This will be a whole new bond. And they have a facilities group that is looking at what they need, and it will probably be kind of infrastructure based. HVAC, things like that, but we don't know yet. There could be some field stuff and some other things, and we are in communication with them around that. The other one is the city, and they don't know what they're doing. They're testing a couple of different items, and they're going to be doing some statistically valid surveys to see how these items do. And that will inform whether or not they go out and decide and put it out on the ballot or not. They have not decided on if they want to do that or not.
So the county sheriff administrative courthouse hasn't.
They have not stated if they're gonna go and when they're gonna go, and they do have a work session on the 20th, so tomorrow night, I believe, to talk about the county courthouse work set and all of that, and it is way more money than a bond could even support. So I think their initial estimations are around 200 million. For context, if we're at 41 million and this is what it's costing it, that I don't think that they could do that. Although they do get some state money, the state does chip in for courthouses, but they're trying to get more on that, but and then they'd have to work in the sheriff, so they have a big thing in front of them, but I don't think that they can solve with a bond.
They won't be ready for May.
And they definitely won't be ready for May and probably not November, and but that is a public agency that has a need. Just like there are many others, but those are the only ones that are actually on the horizon, but still not committed.
That's enough.
It's great.
You just hit a button. Is Matt English on this Centers of Influence with Aquatic Contact, the sheriff's department? I mean, the board steps up and provides them, working down in the marina.
Who's the opposite of sheriff?
You know, I would think that somebody like the sheriff's department would be all over making sure the pool is.
Was a great Marine sheriff too.
Yeah.
Joel.
So,
Joel Harmody, he's a good guy.
Should be at this meeting on the 10th.
Yeah.
Sheriff?
I can reach out to that.
Great, I'll take care of that. Yeah. Do you also know Joel?
I do.
You know Joel?
Yeah, I don't got Joel.
Okay, great.
I'll take care. It's not for.
And if two people invite, you know, that's great.
Yeah, Joel's great. There's a lot of presence.
So I've one request. So we were sent a master sheet of people and groups that would be great to contact. And all you have to do is open it up and then just write your name if you've gotten a hold of them or if you want to get a hold of them. Or you were gonna take a poster to wherever. I entered the ones I did today so that everyone knows, like, okay, I was gonna plan on doing Main Street. Oh, so-and-so did Main Street yesterday. I don't need to do that. I need to focus on something else. So just open that up. put your name in if you've done it or you're going to, and then just close it and it'll save it. Then everybody else will know.
And that came from.
Yeah, I sent an email out today with a PDF of both. There are two different flyers. FYI, just because there's like a little bit of a different look and same info. And so both Spanish and English versions. And then we have paper copies here, and Christy requested, like, in case you wanna do like door to door.
Like your next door neighbor,
Or
you know.
whatever, like a small copies or over there, and we can print more and we can print larger copies, especially if you know where you wanna go. And that's-
Can you do it 2x3 or what's your size?
As we have a lot of signing rights.
I do need to go,
Okay.
Mark, several people have asked for copies of the material,
Yeah.
Mark does have them,
Yeah.
so if you could share them out to the, since you have the full list of the, one of you two.
Yeah.
So the community budget.
Yeah, sure, thanks to. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay or leave, whatever you decide to do.
Which one?
Right. Leave.
It's at the 2 4 5 3 4.
Yeah, that's good.
Right, are we good to keep going or?
We are.
You give instructions?
I can, I
Thank you for the
opportunity.
Push the wrong button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is the next agenda.
It's on December 10th.
Yeah.
Okay, I think just, very foundation update, so, high level,
And I think if
biggest.
you wanna stop by the pool, I can set those printed. I'll bring it down.
So high level, the biggest thing to say is that the foundation is very eager to start working on fundraising for the pool. I think it's going as the next project. It is also tricky because you need to know what you're fundraising for, and so. I don't expect the foundation will officially launch, a fundraiser until there's more clarity from this board on exactly what is being fundraised. They are preparing to be at the December 10th meeting, to, be there and help and engage folks. So they formed a new pool fundraising committee. They've also talked about starting a community outreach committee, kind of getting at what some folks have said here. That's more like almost a long-term thing for the foundation of just having like those connections to that new organization. But some items that is needed from the district board, and recognizing this isn't so specifically today, but I just want to make sure we are keeping progress on this, is they will need a decision about what items will be fundraised for, if there would be specific items to be fundraised for, so that they can work with that. And a decision about what the total ask would be, because that really needs to be done in collaboration with the district. Like the foundation can't just say on their own, or shouldn't really say on their own, like, oh, we're gonna raise this amount, like it needs to be done together. And then, ideally that is paired with the bond ask in such a way that it's clear that the money is needed. It's not just on top of the bond, in the sense that if people think the bond is covering everything, then there's not a lot of incentive to donate. And then, the last point is also about getting the clear messaging out as soon as possible, just kind of plays into this, like, what is being fundraised for, what's the story that needs to be told.
Well, with the foundation, I mean, just, I think the fundraising piece is gonna be a challenge, just because of the answering the what question. Is that group still kind of comfortable with being a communicator for us, for the bond, for the levy? Allowing us to disperse, as a conduit, vice kind of the more traditional foundation role of fundraising, but instead the advocacy and communication. Is that
Yes and no. So like there is talk about that, but we all have to also keep in mind what each entity's role is. And so the foundation is not a political advocacy organization. And like, they can't advocate more than a certain small percentage. So that would be if a PAC is formed, their role.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
But something that was talked about at the last board meeting was this concept of, like, if the foundation is actively fundraising for the project and saying like, this is a great project, this is worthy of donating to. That inherently says, like, sends the message, like, we support this.
Mm.
So it can be helpful in that regard, even if it's not like this overt message of vote yes for it. Yeah.
I heard that. Yeah. I was just kind of concerned about the sequencing of it and just the fundraising and what that would look like.
Yeah.
And I think our immediate need, or my words, is that conduit for communication to more and more people. And harnessing that group and their energies. But I that gets to a gray area.
Yeah, well, and the other challenge with that point is it's a new foundation. It's not a foundation that's been around for 10 years and has, a mailing list of 5,000 people or something, So there's a little bit of a limited scope of how much they can do, yeah. So where is the item on there? I guess it's gonna, I just want to mention that, I thought I had it on here, but that if there's a board member here who would be willing to serve on the pool fundraising committee for the foundation, that would be very helpful and valuable to have a board member who is part of that group, who is helping to lead the charge or going out to fundraise to, businesses and the public. It helps with having, good communication back and forth between the board and the foundation, and just getting more, additional passionate people who can help bring in donated dollars.
So this is a member of this board to join that board under an umbrella specific for the pool fundraising?
Not join the
Making
board,
sure.
not join the board, because often nonprofits, their committees will have volunteers on the committee that are not a board member. The committees don't have decision making.
Just a volunteer on.
Yeah, just a volunteer on a committee. So we don't necessarily need an answer in this moment, but think about it. It would be very valuable if someone.
When are their meetings typically? Just so.
The meetings are generally Mondays in the middle of the day, but the committee would meet different. It would be
Like,
around the schedule of the folks
I
involved.
think the committee just met, like.
Last week, they're meeting again tomorrow, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Okay. All right, well, I had told you before that I was going to come back at this meeting and make a couple of changes to the operation funding projections for the pool. So I went back and I met with Councilman Hunsaker, who was putting this together and got their raw data and was able to change their spreadsheet to have the exact same open hours as us. So they were projecting at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week, and I went back just so we were comparing apples to apples and what our open hours are. So this is with the open hours that we currently have. I went ahead and removed the options 1 and 3 because option 2 seems the closest to what we would need as far as our ability that we are putting together and such. And then I put it in a different format that Christy helped me with it. Felt like it was a little bit more clear to show there, to where just broken down, and I have all the data behind this and such too, but just to show personnel, materials and services and utilities, and then the total for expenses there, and then the capital costs equals the total expenses, and I'll get into all of this in just a little bit, just to kind of walk you along here. And then earned revenue, so this is what their projection is versus what our projection was for this last year. And then what our permanent tax rate is. I put in an extra, there's an extra 38,000 there on what we usually put in for capital, which I'm starting to realize I probably shouldn't have had that, I should have that the exact same, but. Basically, the additional subsidy that we would need would be 537,000. And so, a couple of things to note here. One, there was some questions around their capital rates, why their capital rate was so much higher than our capital rate. They base it on a kind of an industry standard, which is a 0.5% of the total capital costs. And that's meant to fund like their replacement of high value systems. And so a big HVAC system goes out in a few years, or, or 10 years or whatever. And so, yeah, boilers, things like that. Right now, I just took the 37,000 is what our 10-year average is for what we transfer into our improvement fund. Out of our general fund to put into the improvement fund per year. I would say that there are differences here. There's this kind of, when you look at the industry standard, there's this also looking at managing the pool probably the way that it should be managed, which is when something big breaks, we can fix it right the first time. I was giving Christy an example of this, trying to explain it, of like, we had a sump pump go out in our HVAC system that was down below the dehumidifier, where a lot of humidity backs up and it starts to get wet down there, and there was a sump pump, and rather than calling the expensive people from Portland who charged us $1,000 just to show up to replace the sump pump and to go into all this stuff, we drilled a little weep hole at the bottom of that and just let the water run out and drain out, and things like that we do. It's not the best practice, it's not what we should do, but that's the baling wire tracking scenario of what we're doing. And so that's why our capital costs are lower, is because we've been putting off a lot of our maintenance and running things a lot longer than what the preferred maintenance replacement schedules are, and fixing things in a way like this. There is definitely some wiggle room within this. I brought up like does this change based on how complex your system is. Like if you were to put in a saltwater system instead of a chlorine system, which costs more money, and would this dollar amount change? And they said, well, yeah, it can. You can make adjustments within there, so we could adjust this down further if we wanted to.
So it kind of fundamentally is some kind of percentage.
Exactly. Yeah. So the other thing that I did change, and which I had mentioned before, was but I put the actual numbers in there, was for staff retention and just trying to get full-time staff during the day, because it's so hard for us to keep the facility open during the day. Was I added money to have 2 full-time positions there, and that was about $38,000. And that was in addition to Councilman Hunsaker's original quote. So and then also added an extra $48,000 in order because they projected a half-time maintenance person, and this was to bring it up to a full-time maintenance person. Right now, at the pool, when we only have 20 hours a week for the maintenance person to go toward the pool, it's a lot more. The maintenance falls on our aquatic supervisor and the rest of the staff, to where we have other people going out there and doing a lot more maintenance that they probably should be doing. It is technically in their job description to be able to like test chemicals and such, but they're going a little bit beyond where we have our aquatic supervisor, who should be writing the schedule and up there at the front desk and everything, when down there backwashing filters. And that's something that we would rather have just our maintenance person doing. The other one was we put in $75,000 as administrative costs. Right now, a lot of these costs we do put some of the money, some of like Marcy's salary and a couple other salaries toward that, but we don't actually charge them out on part of their use for HR, for budgeting, for the sort of stuff, the same stuff we were talking about with the recreation. We did that one specifically for them because they were a separate fund. Because this is general fund, we've never really separated them out or anything, but I thought that it was important that that is cost recovery part of it in there. So that was the changes that are in there. And so when I put it all together, it comes out with the additional subsidy about what we would need extra would be around $537,000. Let's see. Couple other slides here. This is the same exact one that you saw last month. That just shows the other things that we put into the estimate, which of course is just an estimate at this point. We still can change some stuff, but just of having the part-time maintenance supervisor. Since we backed that one out and put that into aquatics, we would have to put the other half-time in there, and then another full-time maintenance tech, and then 3 seasonal employees, a truck, additional equipment, and then the other ones of community outreach, the recreation to try and fund what we need in order to stay with recreation. The community outreach and volunteer coordinator, which again is a position that we it's just, we've put so much more time into communications and this sort of thing. We keep on hearing from the board that this is important. We want to put time into it, but it's pulling staff away from the job that they're normally doing to do this, to tell our story, to update the social media, to write the newsletters, and to do all this stuff. And so this is creating a position, and also somebody that can, work on volunteers, because we do hear that, but it's like, well, why can't volunteers do it? People don't realize that volunteers, do not take any staff time. I mean, it really, the reason that Chuck, is such a great volunteer for us is he's been doing it for us for about 4 years, and he shows up every single Tuesday, and he knows, where all our tools are, and he's, we pay workers' comp insurance on him. We've got all this stuff worked out, but he's a very good person. When people show up and they're just like, I'd like to volunteer for the weekend, or they don't last long, but training and all that stuff behind it does take a lot of time. And but there's a lot that I think we could do with that. And then there's the planning manager and project manager to be able to move forward with these capital projects and such, and handle, as the SDCs come in and all of this stuff, how we spend that and plan for these things. But right now it's just us trying to piece together. But when I put all that together, it was actually, we went down a little bit in what that would take. So that would cost us about 37 cents per thousand in order to do all of that. And the savings there was with refining the aquatics numbers a little bit and then dropping the hours down to the same hours that we're up in right now.
And we're not planning to really dig into these numbers today, right?
Yeah.
We'll work on that at the work session.
At the work session, I just wanted to update you because of the changes that I made. Yep. Okay, now we'll move on to the next part. I'm gonna turn over to Christy to talk about because she talked a little bit about preview of this stuff coming here, but about having some of these conversations around what sort of things that we might cut or not be able to do if the levy doesn't pass and that sort of thing. So Christy created these next couple slides, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So there's a lot here, and I'll do a little bit of explaining, but I just want to set the stage for the intent today is to have it be sort of like a brainstorming, up with a list of things, not really discuss those things in depth yet, because this is going to take a little bit of time to process and think about. So if we have, clarifying questions, then that is a good discussion to have so that we're kind of all on the same page on what the different things mean. But with the intention then of the work session at that point, digging in and saying like, how do we rank these things? That's kind of trying to set the stage there.
And is there any place for people to add or?
Yeah. And then, it's a little text here, but yes, also, did we miss anything? And you'll see is the third slide we're gonna put up is about getting feedback from people in the community, conversations about these, so that you can get a little bit of insight beyond, your own opinion, before we come back to the next work session. So that's kind of thinking here. So how this is laid out is we've got pool items in blue, rec items in this green, brownish yellow, and then Parks and Trails in gray. And the dollar signs are supposed to kind of indicate the order of magnitude of the savings. As the example shows above, so like $3 signs would be something that's in the hundreds. Now, any of those are still a huge range. But just to give a starting point of like approximately what are we looking at here? And we at a later date can look into more details about the actual dollars there. And we try to capture also a little bit of like what's the non-financial cost too, and the benefit. So I guess we're just kind of going through these, not necessarily saying everything, but the stuff that's on here right now. We have this, the idea of we could cut 100 pool days, that's approximately 2 days a week, okay? Or you could equate that to also a season, right, close for a season. But a weekend day throughout the year, which is approximately 50 days or so. Increasing the price of swim lessons by 50% could be some other number, but by 50% it would equate to about $56. The new price would be about $56. Increasing in-district admission by 20%. Mark has a nice spreadsheet where we can play with those numbers in terms of how much that generates. But you can see stuff like, for instance, that was brought up earlier today. The amount of money that brings in is in the tens of thousands and like low tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. So like that doesn't even come close to solving the need for an additional 500 some thousand. Do not remove the pool covers in the summer. That's really mostly applies in the short term, doesn't apply to any building. And again, though, these are from the lens of like, if a levy is not passed or whatever, an operations measure is not passed. Requiring proof of in-district residency for in-district price. So right now it's an honor system. So having more of a, you have to show ID system, or the default price is the out of district. You can see there's, cons to that. Charge user groups the full cost. That's one I don't know a ton about there, but it's been raised by other people. Increase the price premium, so the difference between the in-district to the out-of-district, making that difference higher. Let's see, so then we've got the rec options. There's not a lot of options really for rec. It's kind of like cut or not, not a lot. But we could look at increasing fees. And as we know, it would probably result in decreased usage of those services as well. So there are those, couple or free recreation options, and then Parks and Trails is perhaps the hardest to come up with things because it's mostly just, general maintenance, and they're maintained in a reactive way, as it's been explained. So we can't cut from a proactive to reactive, we're already at reactive. So maybe kind of, take a few minutes to look at that, kind of process this, and then we can talk about, did we miss something here?
You said we're gonna talk about the dollars another time, so I'm just curious, if every one of these things happen, would that get us to, I just out of curiosity, would that get us close to the 500,000? I'd be curious, just out of.
We'd have to,
Yeah.
we have not had any time to crunch this. My guess is no.
Right.
But we may not need as much. I mean, if we're, if we reproduce standards such as this.
It'd be interesting to look at closing the pool multiple days a week.
Yeah.
I think that would be like the only thing that would, and not just like one day, it would be like
Monday, Tuesdays or something.
2 days probably with, and it's so hard to know like what that cost savings is right now, but it would be probably the most significant out of it all.
Yeah.
I did do an attempt at estimating the numbers, but I don't have the level of detail that staff has. I was just going based on our, public budget. And like, so for like cutting the pool days, the way I approached that was. It would be cutting staffing, because you still have all the fixed costs, you still got all the utilities and everything, right? So more of the kind of more variable, you can staffing. But even that's not completely variable, because you still gotta pay benefit, you know, if it's, you know, like your aquatic supervisor, you still need to pay their full salary. It quickly gets complicated.
Do the cuts to recreational items only include that which is saved by not running that programming? Or does it also include the prospective IGA changes that would occur if we didn't have to negotiate back and forth between fields and pool access for other user groups?
Right, I mean, so to your point, what is happening right now is that the school is not paying us for using the, you know, our facilities and vice versa. But that is still all up for negotiations, so yeah.
Right, if we didn't have a need for fields and recreational usage, then that wouldn't. They go back to. Exactly, did that include those
Yeah, it's
dollars on it?
that is not included,
No.
yeah.
Paid for field, no, it's
Yeah.
more like in the current. Based on our current finances, what's the order of magnitude of these
Yeah.
savings?
Right,
But
but
you
it,
pull one thread here and it unravels.
right, yeah, I mean, so
Exactly.
to your,
Much more complicated.
yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, it then swings more to our favor.
Of
right?
course.
Yeah.
And part of also the idea of like, not necessarily getting into the dollars, I mean, first, it's gonna take some time to come up with more precise numbers than just order of magnitude. But also, if there's items on here that the board collectively wouldn't even consider, you know, then staff shouldn't be spending time trying to crunch those numbers when it's not even in their, you know, being considered.
Well, I mean, this goes to the, you know, masking of pain that we are very good at. And I like looking at this and saying, this is what you get, you know, and I don't, you know, I am not looking forward to having that discussion or wanting to have that discussion at all. But if this is in any way not necessarily a public facing document, because I get that there are too many variables to really define something so in such a way that would make it, you know, consumable. But I don't have a problem at all having this, you know, as a you know, the green, or the blue, the brown, yellow, gray, kind of like, well, you know, this doesn't run on, you know, fairy dust and unicorn horns. We gotta have something that is within the budget threshold that we are left with.
So are we missing anything that we should be pondering and getting input from others on in the coming weeks on this? And if the advisory council folks who are here, you can also, you know, feel free to weigh in if you feel like we're missing something.
I think cutting the pool days is the most important. I think to me, that's the biggest one, because I think that's even something that could be out there now. I mean, immediately. To wake up people, make people have to realize the state of things.
So cutting a season is not specific, not specific out there, and I do wonder if we should include that, like. Yeah, I'm not even sure.
When you talk about a season though, I mean, does that
I know.
really save any money?
Doesn't
Because you
really-
have to, you know, you have to make, there's a certain modicum amount of maintenance and.
Yeah, shutting down, yeah.
And employees are probably harder in that
Yeah.
situation. It's,
Yeah.
what do you-
Layoffs,
3 months.
yeah, there's a lot.
So the days are much more practical, right?
Yeah.
By shifting to 2 days in a week that you can close down, that would probably affect people, but not too bad.
Yeah.
Would be a realistic
I
option.
mean, yeah, and then, you know, I think there's this, you know, a lot of things just to think about, just with equity, just, I think the biggest con with that is just, then it really is becoming like much more of an equity issue where like many people visiting the pool, like in non-work hours. So it's like figuring out what days are the days that you cut, right?
Any I was like.
And is it, I mean, just the notion of being on our heels, I mean, I've heard that in a number of ways. How much, I mean, this is just a prudent exercise to, and nothing more. I mean, I don't want to be blind to the fact that an election is a contest, and that result could go either way. But I'm just over, like again, I've said this before, I in certain aspects of my life, I'm obscenely optimistic about what we could achieve. And I know we need to be realistic about a result that maybe doesn't give us what we want.
Well, and we've heard over and over again, we really need to be able to tell people.
Yeah.
What is going to be lost and what is going to be cut. If let's just call it the levy, we don't know it's gonna be a levy, but fails, right? Like, that wasn't available the last time around. And so there was no answer. And so of course, if you're like, well, why do I need to vote for it then, right?
I think with this as well, this is the big picture that we're talking about here, and I think that the messaging is much more granular than that. I mean, showing an empty pool deck on a day where it's sunny out and beautiful, and we would love to be there. Or a tree down over a trail with somebody who's like, I gotta go back the other way now, because it wasn't tended to. Those are gonna be more impactful emotionally and get people to be like, I've been there before, I don't want to experience that situation. That may help inhibit the having to get here, because that sends the message of, this is the reality of it. We don't want to have to do any of these. But what does that really look like? Because dollar signs don't really sell it the same way as the visceral experience.
I have a question for you guys, just for my optimism, and want to hear about it. So those of you, because I wasn't involved, or I'm new to the board since you guys went levy and all last time in the bond. How much engagement was there last time? Like, is this a lot different? I mean, I would imagine, between the advisory council and all the people who were, not. Are we getting more engagement? Are you guys getting more engagement? So, I mean, that makes me optimistic that there's already a lot more consciousness out in the community paying attention and thinking about this stuff. So I kind of want to know that, understand that, so that I can be a little bit more, less glass half empty kind of guy. So it seems like for the last 6 months that I've been involved, that there's been a pretty heavy, for a special district or a pool, it seems like there's been a solid amount of volunteer time. People are just sticking in their efforts to be here, to listen, to speak. What was it like for you guys last time?
Yeah, I think the big difference last time was there was such a huge lag between when we did the study and then when we put it on the ballot. So where like a lot of the people that were involved in the study and that were doing the work back then had already moved on or just weren't coming in and being engaged with it. We didn't have a foundation at the time. We didn't have an advisory committee. There's way more right now going along here where we've got a lot of momentum. I believe that we did a really good amount of public outreach last time beforehand, but it was during this time leading up to it, all that we didn't have as much. I think that we are in a much stronger space with that amount of engagement, but it still is, in the big scheme of things, very little compared to like the population and all the people that are really out there. There's going to be still a big push where even if there's 16 advisory council members and 8 to 12 foundation members that were not engaged before. They were all people that probably voted for us or were supporters in the first place. Besides maybe a couple on the advisory committee that we know, but they were already cheerleaders that were engaged before. The question is now, how do we engage all the people that were not engaged before, and get them and tell the story and all of that. I think that the main thing was just simplifying the story, keeping it focused on just the pool and reducing the cost. Those are the big simple things that I'm going to redo.
Well, and I agree with all that. Yeah. There will always be some form of echo chamber. The people who care are the people here right now. I think the big momentum shift last go around too came with those that were opposed and what we previewed or what we didn't see with Collins Field and with that community and with the others. Just talking taxes. We did not battle against a food and beverage tax. We decided to go against that. But mentioning now, what would that look like at a local level or a state level? What would we be up against in that moment? That might be a momentum shift against us with everything that we see that seems to be in the positive right now.
And one thing that I do think is that we do have a lot of great supporters, and I think last time they were a bit quiet. Like where I think one suggestion that I've heard from advisory council members, which I have really thought is a good one, is really trying to get like our swim team and our water polo team, for example, to be strong advocates, and like having just like our user groups really like help be a voice, outside of that. So, while I think that they've always been supportive, I mean, there's still a lot that could be done to help. Like,
I mean, right now, Safety Fair is gonna be the last big hurrah in this town right next door before a May ballot. That's where everyone's gonna come together if we have just masses around us to be able to hear, if we have a booth out there, anything else that we wanna target. Thinking backward planning, we're not doing anything for a static parade in December or anything like that, just given what we're doing. And to what Brian said, like, it's a short fuse.
Yeah, I was thinking that yesterday, the static parade is 5 days before our big events. To have something in the middle, or at that with a big flyer, it's like, come on here,
Yeah.
But just trying to figure out how to put it all together right now. What do you think?
I think a lot has changed from the time, from last time. I mean, there's been as you guys mentioned, the foundation was created. We're getting more engagement. I mean, a park's been purchased with the grant. We have this advisory board or committee now. I think the Collinsfield, that whole community is still upset. I think the state of our government, like our environment, I mean, can also affect what's going on right now and how some of us are living. And maybe we're not thinking about investing our money or even staying here. So I think a lot has changed, but I think it just Hood River is a really difficult community to ask for when it comes to money.
Yeah.
My personal feeling is that the pool is just not the thing on there. It is not a priority on the community. I feel that if maybe the coaches and the kids who are involved in water sports do come in strong, that could make a change.
I'm with that same sentiment too of man, there's so much to do and so little time and so few people, given the magnitude of what is being accomplished. We do need to be unapologetic in the amazingness that's going on. I mean, pulling in Parkdale Park, going out and saying Barrett Park is still open access and available. We talked earlier about West Side and creating access for more open space there. Some of those things we just need to say like, here you go. All of that is this, but we're also talking about this at the same time. I feel like we really go onesie twosies rather than a big picture of certain things, and we need to talk big picture in the future as we get to May. And that means talking about everything and being loud and proud in so many senses, rather than saying, we might have said a few people who wanted Barrett to be gone by now. That's not the case. This is the case. And this is what we're proud of and will continue to be that way.
Yeah.
Martha, I have one question, because I definitely agree. You said you thought that the baseball community is still angry. And I think I feel that tension there, whether or not I talk to baseball people, or I don't talk to very many, I talk to some. But is there something that we can do, I guess, about that community to Or I don't know if you have insider information on that.
I
Yeah.
don't, I've only talked to some of the Latinos that do the baseball, right? So, and that's just one of the big things that comes up when we're having a conversation about Parks and Rec. You know, and I've tried to communicate that it's not like we're trying to get rid of a field to not create more fields. But that seems to be very present.
Last season coaching, I spent a lot of time talking to everybody and trying to understand everything across from the clubs to the just town. It was hard for us. I agree with Martha. They're not on our side. I don't know that they're against us right now if we're not going after Collins in some way that they feel personally targeted, but they are not on our side. So if we
And
actually want them on our side, we have to do something that says, hey, please welcome to the fold.
I don't think that they're necessarily like that they wouldn't could want one. I think I just lost my train of thought. They just look at the pool. They don't look at the whole at everything that is being provided. You know, they're just focusing on that. They're not thinking about the trails. They're not thinking about the other parks, and what we have there to develop. I mean, I'm a team player, but I also like to be very realistic as to how it is. And they don't realize they don't realize how they don't really believe that the pool is that messed up. That's, I think, where it's at. They don't believe that because our staff does such an amazing job to keep up with it. And so I had mentioned that in the past is that maybe the pool needs to just go for them to get out of reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I
I
mean.
know it's
yeah,
a sad statement, but that's just,
Yeah. We've already been through it with the library. I mean, you know, that was closed for 18 months, something like that. I mean.
I think there's been enough opportunity for them to come out and reach out and ask more in-depth questions. And it's not like we're not social people, like at least myself, you know, that people can stop me by anywhere, send me a message on social media, stop at my office. I mean, and I can't say less about everybody else and how they've tried to be active in the community. I think just a lot of them don't depend on the pool to where they think they'd miss it if it was gone.
Yeah, I guess the question is, would more individual, outreach and contact be helpful?
We'll get to that a little bit in the final slide.
I know, I
We
think
had a
it
little
needs
bit,
to be
so-
like, hey, the polo team, the swim team doesn't have a pool. This is their last year using the pool because it's gonna go, you know? Where are you guys gonna go?
So that's a good message. I mean, like if they're a baseball field, right, we're to go, yes.
Should we move to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay, next one's gonna take some explaining. Okay, so we've talked, we've had lots of conversations about what is the operations measure, right? What are the approaches? And it's mostly been discussed as a levy, right? 5-year levy. We've talked a little bit about prepared food and beverage. What I have here in front of you is kind of a comparison of different options. Please take this with a grain of salt. The dates are only like very rough estimates. Of course, now we put this up here and someone might, screenshot it and say, here's the dates the pool's gonna be closed. This is just for the sake of discussion to try to look through these concepts. And it's to look through these concepts, also the topic that was raised about like, well, why do you need a levy when the pool is closed and how do we approach that with different options? So on the far left, you have just, dates, and it's not to scale, but just there are dates in order. And then the second column is kind of, rough estimate of some of the action items, some of the tasks. So, we very much talked about May 26th election, right? And then, so those first things are pretty straightforward. As you get down, it gets more and more just kind of a guess that would need to be updated more later. But those are, you know, kind of those estimates, and then to where's, you know, 5 years from that original vote. As we go across the different options we can consider, and so this is also for you to think through, process, talk to some people before the next work session, come back ready to really say which of these should we do. So what the simple levy means is what we've been talking about. You know, you set a levy rate that people vote on, and it's that levy rate for those 5 years, right? And that's what the school district does, and you know, the public safety one, so that's what that's getting at. You know, showing where collection would begin, and you know, showing that it would begin when the pool's still open, and then you have collection, you know, when the pool's closed as well. So that's that. The next one is the concept of, it's still basically the first option, but it would not have to be, let's see, what's the word to use there? You wouldn't have to apply the full rate each year in your budgeting process, right? Charge the full rate. So like, if it were, say, a 40-cent levy, it could start at 10 cents.
So phased in.
Yeah, phase it in, exactly, based on needs, and then it would be less of an increase, I mean, less of a sudden increase.
When a person votes for a levy, they're voting to give the taxing district the authority to collect taxes up to that amount. So even with our permanent rate, if we wanted to collect lower amount, we could. So you just say like, we're like collecting up to 40 cents per thousand, started at a dime, go to 20 cents in a year or whatever. It's just that explaining that to the public.
Yeah.
Is
right.
Very, very tricky.
Yeah. And the trust, like the public's trust that, okay, first of all, they have to understand that that's what the plan is.
Yeah.
No, I mean, understanding maybe not that hard, just know that that's what the plan is. And then trust that the board for the next 5 years will stick to that plan because they board would have the authority to charge the full amount, you know. But the pro of it is it could nicely address some of these issues that are being raised about like, do you need the full amount when the pool's closed?
And then that allows it to be increased at a time of the pool opening.
Right.
And there wouldn't be any lag or delay.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I knew boards have the ability to charge up to amounts.
Yeah.
I just wonder, is it too much inside baseball thing? I mean, you know, there's a really a nice sophistication and you know, with that, just because it gets us money for trails, it gets us money for operation, and then, you know, we're driving out of the pool gets, you know, built, boom, we're open for business.
Yeah.
If we pass a bond and then shut down whatever the time frame is, what would be anticipated savings for the pool being down 18 to 24 months? Have we calculated that if we were front loading and then discussing once the pool reopened, and not just the time frame gap, but what money would be pocketed ready for that opening?
I'd have to I'm guessing 400,000 to 600,000 or so. I'd have to calculate because it's a full-time cost, so that would not go down.
Yeah.
So potentially 1 year of Councilman Hunsaker's projected increase.
No, well, coincidentally around there, but it's but I wouldn't phrase it that way because it's not tied together.
Correct.
Like that, but.
I mean, a simple way to look at it is what is the subsidy to the pool right now, but that would be an overestimate of how much would be saved.
Right, and you would not be paying the utilities, the chemicals, all of that stuff, the lifeguards and everything. But there are other costs that you would still be paying on it. We'd have to calculate that.
Right, but
yeah,
still worth knowing.
Enough to where like that for that year, some of that money could go toward you know, the catching up on parks, because it's general fund money, so it could be go toward some different.
I definitely think that thinking about what would happen with that money if we were, to be closed and we still had, either had the levy or what would be done with that money during the time that the pool would be closed is an important one to think about for sure.
And I question whether people will even pay attention enough to know that, oh, they're giving us a 30-cent break. I mean, I don't, I think you, even if we said we were doing that, there'd be 5% of the community be like, yeah, it's really cool that Parks and Rec does that. Most people probably wouldn't even be paying attention. They would just be bitching that the rates went up initially, or potential rates are up. They don't think, I don't think they're looking whether we're taking the full amount or not. So that sounds pretty, but I don't think it makes sense. I think you either ask for all the levy or you don't.
So again, we're gonna discuss this in more depth.
Yeah.
Plan as a work session, but like, let's raise anything that's like, what does this mean, so that we can all kind of get more input on it. The delayed levy is an interesting one. That we ran by legal counsel. If we wanted to seriously look into it. I don't know if we wanna do a little more research onto it, into it, but. What this idea is you still have the vote at the same time. But it's written into the measure that the levy would go into effect at a future date, specify that date, like 2028. So you'd know whether you got it or not, right? At the same time as we know whether the bond passes, but collection wouldn't start until a later date, and that might be also easier to explain to people because literally it would be written right into language. Still, you have to explain it though. I mean, still people will not necessarily all probably read the fine print there, right? But it does get at the, trying to match up the expenditures a little bit more, but then you also had nothing until that date, and there's other needs. That then there'd be nothing to help with those other needs.
Except the savings that we just mentioned,
This-
while shut down.
Right, during the closure, yeah.
And the confusion, I mean, I can still think like 2 years from now, let's say it starts, it starts today for 2 years from now, people forget. And then they're like, wait a minute, how did I just got this charge? And I'm sure there would have to be some sort of communication before the actual collection.
Between the delayed and the gradual.
Yeah.
I think to me, the gradual, I have a more of affinity with it. I think there's a complexity and communication piece and just the elegance of that, in terms of addressing immediate needs to improve trails. And then being able and posture to, once the pool is complete, to just run.
Yeah.
And I maybe that's how we talk about it. I mean, between the two, but I know, I understand we're not at that place, but between those two, I think the gradual to me has a more of a.
And then the last option is sort of a 2-for-1 option, but it's delaying the choice by, say, a year. And that would be in part to further explore the prepared food and beverage option. That could still land in saying in a year going for a levy if the food and beverage were deemed to be not at all the best option. But the food and beverage is not really a viable option for May because that's gonna require more groundwork of working with either the city or county, and that's gonna take time to do. And I think that I've had some conversations, there's some possibilities there in the longer term. There's some openness to having those conversations, but again, like by May, it's just not viable, so we'd have to decide like that we would be separating them and then working on that.
And I guess the only other delayed choice would be, like, I think yours is like, don't do either next year.
Yeah.
And then go out in May of 2027 for a food and beverage, I would assume.
Or
levy.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other is to do a levy and then the food and beverage and over the next 5 years.
Yeah, this graph or this doesn't factor in like in 5 years, there will need to be another decision. This is for the immediate, what's the route to take? Another benefit of the delayed choice is that we would know if the bond passed or not. Right? Now, it's more risk too, because what if it passes and then the measure doesn't pass to run the pool. But we have an indicator, we have, you know, an indicator from an actual vote of what was the outcome.
I guess the only other one to maybe add to it would just be to go back and consider the dissolution and rebuild, which, you know, we talked about upping the special district. I mean, I know we discussed it last week, at our last session, at our last meeting, but I mean, is that still on the board? I mean, it's not up there on the list, but
That would probably need to be in the delayed choice at
that'd be
best,
considered.
right, in a year from now at best, or in a year from.
It would have to be probably in 5 years after we prove ourselves with a levy or something like that. The one difficult thing with that is it is 2 votes.
Right.
And so now it would be vote yes, yes, yes for the parks. So I think that in a separate time would be better. Plus, yeah, for this May, without talking, we'd have to have a.
Part 2 by deal. For sure.
Technically, I'd start making phone calls tomorrow and start working on it. But we have to get a resolution from the city and get the county on board, and that's. We'll pass that.
Yeah.
You said multiple times the difficulty with asking and getting, and then going back out and asking again and trying to explain those differences and what goes on there. What research have you found about the fatigue though, of just asking for a yes and a yes, or 3 yeses at once? Like, how does that play out with people just psychologically being like, cool, you're asking a lot, I'll give you this one and not that one at the same time?
It definitely makes it more complicated. I think that, it does happen a lot in Parks and Rec because they do, these things do go along oftentimes, and they do pass together. I think that it's best when they are packaged together and they are complementing each other. Where I don't see it as well as when it's an a la carte sort of thing, and some people take it as that, and I think that was one of the issues with the county in 2018 when they brought a couple things. There was, I think some people supported one of them and didn't support the other. And enough people did that where it split the vote. And I was in a community where they decided, like, there was a whole bunch of capital needs and we put them all in the same ballot where there was like 15 different things. I mean, it was a public works facility, it was a sledding hill, I mean, very small things, and they were all like the little ones, and none of them passed, and it was just, wow, you know, you just had people being like, oh, I want this one, this one, and this one, and I'm gonna say no to all these others because I can't afford all of them, and it didn't go. So, but that was a lot of different things. I think that if you're focused and they're the same thing, I think that you've got a better chance, but I definitely, it's the asking for one and then asking again, where I've seen it go down. That's with both Redmond and the Madras, where I've each time that they went out and asked for money, the next time they've gotten, it's been less and less.
Right. In that case, I mean, just me, I think as we're talking about these and what we saw last go around, I feel as though the logical understanding of asking for a bond and a levy at the same time, the gradual or delayed can be linked up most easily to understanding, cool, yeah, that makes sense. And I can reconcile that in my brain. Whereas the simple of, cool, well, you're getting greedy now. Even if you're asking for less than you asked for last time, you're still, you know, I don't got much to give.
Yeah.
That's just my thought on that process.
Yeah. So the homework for all of us is to have some conversations with a target of ideally a minimum of 5 conversations with people that are not people you already generally talk to. Doesn't need to be a stranger, but think of people who, especially like people that are probably kind of on the fence on this, or you know voted no, but maybe do support the pool. Getting their insights on both the idea of what should be cut if, you know, we don't get more dollars. And which of those funding options seems most palatable, most possible. It'll take a little bit of explanation, you know, so that's why conversation is best. But yeah, the goal of doing that and then having the work session to be able to rank the items that might be cut and probably come to a decision about which of those concepts for the planning measure.
Those dates provided, I can't do the fourth, I can't do the third.
Yeah, I'm out of town on the fourth. Oh, no, like, I can do one of those. Sure.
We actually have a swim meet on the 4th that I'm
It's
working.
like the third, Martha, are you around on the third? Available on the third?
You're asking if I'm around on the 3rd?
Yeah, the third, so like the fourth is
No.
out.
I'm in Mexico from the 29th till the 4th. I could zoom in, I guess.
Well, laughing first time, that's, yeah, laughing from the knowledge, yeah.
I mean, I'm doing it.
Is there, what's driving the 3rd, 4th? It's the 8th?
Before December tenth.
Yeah.
And before the next board meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit more to talk about that for December 10th of, you know, what direction we're leaning toward. We don't have to have an actual commitment here, but like, hey, we've talked about over, we're thinking about, moving toward this so that people kind of have an idea of that.
I mean, the 3rd is not ideal for me. I'm gonna,
The second work for everybody? Tuesday?
I can do the second.
I can do the 2nd.
I mean, do I have to be there? Can you guys do it without me?
No, you don't. I mean,
Monday the 8th, I mean.
yeah.
I mean, if you could attend virtually, that's better than nothing, that's for sure.
I mean, I'll try. I just don't know
Yeah,
what
but
that's gonna
we
be.
won't need a quorum of, we're not, yeah, it's more of a discussion. If you wanna weigh in on it.
Okay, we wouldn't even need a quorum if we're, yeah, because we're not, like, if we decided we want to go with simple levy, we wouldn't need a quorum because we're not deciding the amount yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's,
There's always Monday, the eighth.
Monday the 8th, I'm wide open.
I'm in front of me.
Yeah, I leave town on the 9th, but I could, I could
The eighth and the eighth.
I prefer the.
It's not much before the tenth, but I guess it's before the tenth.
It actually is better for staff to be able to put stuff together for this, because we got a lot of, people out of town, the holiday, Thanksgiving and such, so.
Okay.
8th.
And Mark,
I'll be in bed, but I can zoom in for sure.
Okay. 6 o'clock, like normal?
yeah, it might be a couple minutes, like.
Okay. Okay.
And we, how long do you think it's going to be?
I think we should probably plan 2 hours, I mean, an hour seems like we never get it.
I just, if it were 3, then I was just wondering if we wanted to go earlier.
But I don't think Grace can hear me, right?
I could join late, but yeah, I think let's give yourself 2 hours.
It's 2 hours and then, okay, for one topic.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
One
well,
big topic.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Great.
And if we finish early.
Yeah.
I think Jason's first 2 meetings, we finished like weirdly early, and you're like, this is not normal.
Definitely. Alright.
You learned.
Well, thanks, everyone. All right. The finance reports, so we are starting to get into the time of the year where we'll start seeing some revenue coming in on the taxes, but not quite yet, because there's still numbers from October. But the bills have come out and I think that we'll see this number here go up quite a bit in the next meeting, because when the tax bills go out in November, a lot of people pay their taxes right away and then put stuff. So we should see that revenue boost. But everything else, we seem to be looking like we're going along really well. All expenditures, well, total expenditures at 31%, which is about where we would see for this time of fiscal year. And we don't see anything that's too out of the ordinary on this, right now. Of course, things are cyclical with programs in the summer and pools and expenses being a little bit higher during that time of year, but we're sitting right, for general fund. Recreation fund, also, looking fine, recreation programs, at 25%, recreation total expenditures at 26%, which is actually really, good right now. And so those are the main two ones that we're gonna continue to look at there, because of course, the beginning fund balance, shouldn't be factored in when you look at the total revenue right there, but just, you know, what our programs are coming in, what our expenses are, so. That one's, tracking along, pretty nicely right now. We'll see a lot more as we go through the budget process this year on what what's happening without the school district's, funding for recreation. And then system development charges, we've actually seen some trickling in this year so far, which is great because we had such a poor year last year. As the auditors were bringing up there. We also see some on the horizon. I've been getting some more emails from the planning departments asking me questions and telling me about kind of some upcoming projects that are coming around. And so there's a couple of small projects, but development projects that are in the works. And so if they are working on them all right now in October, it's actually really good timing to where they'll probably be trying to start permitting them in spring, and that's when they pay their SDCs, and a lot of them are try and hit that deadline to get the permits all issued in the springtime so they can be building this summer. So we're hoping to see a good boost to the SDCs and getting back on track with those this year. We'll also see hopefully in the next month, and we'll get into this in the director's report, we'll see a big reduction in our expenditure in SDCs as we're paying for the Parkdale Park property. We'll be getting the state grant money, but we'll have to pay the balance on some of the SDCs, and so should look a little different next month. Everything's normal here with the improvement fund, just getting interest, no expenses yet this year.
So Marty, thinking about the work session coming up.
Yep.
If we are able to talk about where would be our red line for how much repairs we've done to the pool before it closes.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just this account that we'd be talking about, or is there anywhere else that we would be pulling from?
This is the account that would be full repairs from. Well, there is a capital replacement for the contingency. I would consider this. I mean, there is if stuff happens, there are other places that we would shift things around if we had to and such, but this is the fund that is dedicated toward that and other capital projects. Okay. Any other questions on finance? All right. Director's report. Parkdale Park. I've kind of got two items in there. I'll combine them into one right here, which is the Lions Club approached me, and they have been doing some great projects in town the last few years, focused around parks and playgrounds, mostly in the city. The Man Park, there's a big rebuild there. My wife and kids just were there a couple days ago and reported how much they loved it. And they've done some things over here next door at Jackson Park. With of course the stage shell and the accessible seating area and some other things, and then they've been looking actually at some playgrounds things for Jackson Park, some additions as well there, but they wanted to do things in the Mid-Napa Valley, and so they were asking about Odell Park and Parkdale Park and what sort of things are needed there. In Odell, one thing that I brought up was our playgrounds they're very well used there, but there's no swings, and it's kind of funny to have a park and playground without swings, and it's a kind of a simple thing to be able to put in, although not nearly as simple as you would think with distance of fall zones and the amount of space that is, the footprint that swings actually take up, which is probably why they would put it in the first place. Yeah, but all the codes that you have to do in order to put in a swing set and such, and they actually take up a pretty large footprint, and then what that wall fall zone is. But they're interested in that. They said they do see that there's some drainage issues in that park, which we do see as well. In fact, all along there in Odell, there's a big drainage issue, clay and such. And they said, well, as part of that, we'd like to try and help address some of the drainage issues that you have if we decide to do that. But they were interested in that specifically, swing sets in Odell. The other one that they brought up was Parkdale Park. You know, with it just coming on as a brand new park. Playground, there is a playground right next door here, next door to the Parkdale Community Center, that is, since it's directly across the street, we were saying, well, maybe not as much need as for a playground right over here in this park, but there is this area of trees right here. So this is, as if you're standing here in these trees, looking outward is this field right here, and there's the Grange building. So this is baseline. And so, yeah, you're looking this direction. So that's what the field looks like right now. It's actually a pretty good, big, flat field. And you're hiding about a little more than half more of space across here. And so this is just under 2 acres of space, and enough space to put like probably keep it open, but have maybe like a couple backstops for like 2 t-ball fields on corners, and then just be able to do different size soccer fields in there. So like when we do our last game of the year for soccer, for like mini World Cup, we do that up at Parkdale at the elementary school. This is enough room for 4 mini soccer fields for like mini World Cup size. I'm sorry, not 4, 8. And so we could do, you know, have that actually there on that facility.
Would it be possible to do like a little concrete, small, like 3-on-3 adult futsal field? Do you think
anything's
you pitch that to those guys? Because yeah, like you mean that community up there would probably love it. Those kids would probably use a concrete futsal field all day long.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. I was thinking with if it's turf, there's a lot more flexibility with things that we could do. You could do the futsal over here, or there's other spots where you could probably try and work that in. If we get too much into this, I would say that we'd want to try and probably master plan this park.
Yeah.
If we start actually like building infrastructure around it. But a couple things to think about here. One is this does increase maintenance if we are doing this and now we're mowing this other area, and if we irrigate all this and everything. And we've just had all the conversations about like what we would cut and being careful with not adding new infrastructure and then doing all of this. So there's some things to consider around that. There's also, I had another member of the community reach out that was just like, oh, we could get a volunteer corps, which we hear, of people that will go out there and be maintaining this for us, and it would be great to engage the Parkdale community and try and do that. We can try and do that, but I hate relying on volunteer maintenance for long-term stuff. Volunteer, I think, is oftentimes good for like a small service projects or that sort of thing, like the Lions Club was going to do in there. But to find the people that are willing to show up week after week and hop on a mower on a volunteer basis, it's a tougher ask, and just relying on it is difficult. So I just wanted to consider that as well, that we just took on a asset that will take more maintenance for us, and by turning it into a more maintenance heavy park, does you know, maybe the messaging at this point in time is not a message that we want to send. The swing set doesn't really add any maintenance at all, or very little. This would. So anyways, just thought I would bring that to this group, and they're not looking to make any decisions about this until sometime, I think they said February or March, which when they were thinking that they might start talking more about this. They were just kind of kicking the tires right now. We could even probably delay them you know, until after the election or a year or whatever, if we wanted to say like, if we're interested in this right now, but maybe the Parkdale Park thing in the future. We probably will have to, well, we will, should say probably, we will have to remove these trees. I just actually met with the owner of the orchard, the man that has had trees on this property for all these years. He was expecting this, the trees would go away. They had trees here as kind of a handshake deal, and they were using it, to reduce the taxes on the property. And so they were getting the farm tax deferral on it. But he said it's okay that he's, doesn't have these trees to manage anymore, but he does not want to be next to a managed orchard, and asked if we can remove them this fall, or this spring. And so, we will, probably be, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that, with the budget and such, probably talking on water soil conservation, seeing what grants are available. They've got some chipping grants and some different things like that. But, we're removing both trees and roots, and so we'll have to, be doing that. Probably, he said before March would be great if we could do it before then. Before that, his trees started to live, which we want to be respectful of the orchard community up there, and I don't want to be spraying these trees or taking, doing anything with them, so removing them is the best bet right now. So that's kind of my update there on Parkdale Park and such. I don't know if there's any questions or comments on, what the Lions Club could do with us, so if you want to discuss that now or at night.
I don't think we should do any more development until we know if we have the money to maintain it. And secondly, I would want some input from the community in Parkdale, like, I don't know what they want there, like, I mean, I would assume they might want a field, but I don't really know, and I'd rather have some sort of confirmation before investing money and effort.
Yeah, removing the trees is one thing, and it will be an undertaking, but I definitely would not want to put something in that somebody loves that we then just have to take back out and explain while we go and do more that's planned.
Well, they would, yeah, I mean, I could see a reaction when you didn't ask me.
Yeah.
This could fully suit, but you didn't ask me.
Yeah.
So there's a process.
Yep.
I'll talk to at least one orchardist friend about tree removal, 'cause, I mean, unless it sounds like you don't feel like you necessarily have that information. Like that you need to do some research too,
You're happy to, but yeah, we have some leads as well of who he used to do some of that stuff. Some companies that we call and get quotes from and such, but we were looking at other things with like grant money through water soil conservation for chipping and things that it'd be great if you want to talk.
See if we have.
Yeah.
To the same point of all the wonderfulness that we have and what we can do to maintain it. Maybe not for now, but the next meeting, I know we originally discussed the West Side Park and creating that open access and moving some things in the fall of this year. And plenty else is taken over with the acquisition of Parkdale and everything, but I would love to discuss that and figure out where we're at. So it's more of a selling point going into May before things get too frozen and too difficult, or we add something big like this to have to deal with tree removal and everything else, which will be substantial.
Yeah, but we can talk about that at another meeting. I definitely, it's not even entered the workflow on things right now, so it's still, it was listed as one of my goals, but I was also told that it was probably if you were to rank the goals, I was told that was the last one, and we have not been able to.
Would your angle there be, I wanna know what the options are if we get more maintenance dollars?
No, my goal there is to open it up to the public to have access and make it an open space, much like there is, so we can sell that component of public land being available to the public.
Or like the school district property to the north of Main Street, like off of the West Side Community Trail.
Yes.
Like that's probably like the better example of like perhaps what could happen with that property. Like creating like either like people like walking on it to create like footpaths or,
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I want them to think of it that way because it's theirs and it's been theirs for years and it's been walked around. I want it to be walked through.
I know that we have talked about that, past meetings and there's general interest in that. But like also thinking about timeline, like, is that really something that's feasible? I mean, we're talking about like 6 months.
we're talking about removing fences, and when we did our strategic goal prioritization, we mentioned it was at a 10K mark potentially. For having to get that done, and then having that goodwill of, look what we have available, look what we're doing, and we don't have to do much with it except make it open space, is what I remember discussing before. And so I'm thinking of May coming up here, and that's another back pocket and a way to dream.
I don't know that that will be the consequences of doing that though. Because the other consequences, wow, they're adding, like, I mean, there's so many other ways you could take it, like, you're at. How
Can we
can you add
talk
this
about
part if
this
you
a
don't have
different
money
time?
to pay for it?
Can we
What
talk
was that, Brenda?
Can we talk about this at a different meeting?
Yeah, that's why I said, I just wanted to make sure it's on the agenda for December. We
Okay.
didn't have to do it now.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda.
Mm.
All right, last thing, I wanted to bring up was that we had a conversation about e-bikes on our trails a few, months ago. And I mentioned wanting to kind of, help with creating some sort of consortium where people talk about it. I've talked with Megan Remy, who, is the Safe Routes to School coordinator, through an ODOT grant, but technically works for the school district. And she invited me on this, policymakers, e-bike ride. The topic was really specifically around people under 16 on e-bikes in traffic, and the lack of state laws or guidance around that, and trying to define that better, and advocacy for that. I did bring up the trail thing with the group and just kind of mentioned that that's why I was there, and the angle I was looking at. And the conversation didn't go, it was kind of difficult because we never stopped at like a space. We were mostly just going biking to different intersections and then talking about the intersections and talking about the difference between the different classes of e-bikes and things like that. But being able to have some side conversations with like a few people about that, and trail use of the waterfront trail and some other things. There was some good networking and good conversations, and we've talked about the need to meet more often and try and come back further. There probably won't be any sort of legislation. They're working on this on a statewide level. There was some micro mobility bill in the last session that didn't go anywhere. They are looking that this is a short session and everybody can only put forward 2 bills. They don't think they got a chance of putting anything forward. Jeff Elbridge was here and said that this was the only, or that he didn't have any space for it at this point, but he had been supportive before of the e-bike and micromobility legislation. In fact, I think he's one of the only Republicans, or the only Republican that voted for this, who put his name on it and was supportive of it before. So we appreciate that he actually showed up with his own e-bike. Which he had just come straight from deer hunting and he uses his e-bike out hunting, which was a great service. So anyways, it was good to meet with that group and get a little bit of momentum going, but we definitely on the local level, I think we'll start talking more about how we're all doing with e-bikes, because really just talking with this group and seeing how it goes, it's definitely not just like a Parks and Rec problem. It's something that everyone is, problems maybe not the right word, but it's an issue that we're all dealing with, and trying to wrap our heads around.
I imagine there were a variety of opinions there, right? It wasn't like everyone was kind of in one camp or another.
I would say that this was definitely an advocate group of people that were there. There was people that were curious about it. There were a couple people, like there's some city council members that had not been on an e-bike before, didn't really know much about it, so they were there just more to get educated. There was not a event that was open to the public.
Yeah.
And so you did not have a lot of people. One of the things I really came away with on the the one is just it's so complex, but on what they are really trying to do is just the class 2 e-bikes only. So pedal assist only, nothing with a throttle, limited to 20 miles an hour, to be able to have that for kids down to middle school age. And that was something that Megan especially is pushing, and it seemed like this whole group was in agreement that for that age and that specific thing. But that's not like the rad bikes and a lot of the ones that we've seen over in the bike blocks across the middle school and such that have the throttles and all that. And then just knowing, getting a big lesson on the differences and all of that. We were all on class 2 e-bikes that, and just seeing like, you really do have to pedal to get a movement and such. It just gives you an assist and such. And so that was good. I've been on 2 or 3 e-bikes before, but I've never been on a class 2 before. And it was nice to experience it like that with everybody.
Those big wheels fit into the e-bike as well? You know what I'm talking about, just again, throttled, big wheel.
Like a fat tire one?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen it in class 2 with the fat tires.
Okay, because there are a fair chunk of kids around here too that I've seen.
Yeah, most of those like the rad power bikes are those ones, the really big are that have the throttle.
Those are different.
Yeah, these are like a skateboard with a big wheel on it and leaning forward.
Oh, no, those aren't e-bikes at all.
Well, but those are
Well,
part of the
exactly.
micromobility bill in
Yes.
terms of identification.
Okay,
They
yeah.
identify, actually, I don't know that they identify one wheels, they identify though, like.
The scooters, and
Yeah.
yeah, there was a whole bunch of that other bill, and what she was pushing for was specifically this was just the age limit. There wasn't actually the micromobility bill, but this was just updating and giving updating the age limits for class 2 e-bikes only, which the bill or the law that the city of Hood River has now said that they are enforcing for people under 16 for e-bikes. I don't know. It hasn't been tested in courts or whatever, but according to Megan, she believes that they are it's a scooter thing from the 90s that they are using for that 16 and over thing, because there really is not a law defining this type of bike, the class 2 e-bike and everything, because that didn't exist when all this. So, you know, there was some discussion on whether or not if somebody actually got charged with that and they took it to court, and whether or not it would stick or not.
Thank you.
So anyways, that was it was a good discussion, but it didn't get me much farther with Parks, but it did give me a foot in the door and FaceTime in front of a representative and a lot of other people and just conversations around it. So it was good, but just I'll keep you updated on the saga of e-bikes. That's it. Good to be in order. If there's anything.
Yeah, just the 5 conversations we were to have. The document that you used, is that in this? I didn't.
The slide, just the
Yeah.
slides.
I can put it.
Yeah.
Can that be shared with us separately, just like inside the email? That way we'll have, I can print it and
Sure.
when I'm having my conversations.
Yep.
File them.
Yep.
But
Or more.
definitely more, but minimum. That really prompted a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great to see.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, just thank you to everyone, staff, board, everyone's just putting in a lot of time and effort, and I think working really well together too overall, you know, so just shout out, thank you.
All right, yeah, I hope you all have a nice holiday, wherever you end up being. It's next week already.
Next week. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, let's do it. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
So I'm standing here with Brian. I was like, that's a good idea.